The Forsaken Alpha. An unyielding legacy. In the shadowed realm of pack legends, where loyalty wavers and hearts break like brittle ice, there exists a story whispered on cold winds and carried by restless spirits. A tale of betrayal, redemption, and the haunting promise of fate. Imagine, for a moment, an alpha whose very essence was fractured by a single act of rejection, an act that echoed through generations. It is said that this alpha, once mighty and revered, cast aside his destined mate so swiftly that the tender bloom of life she nurtured was left to fend for itself in a world that showed little mercy. This is the legacy of the Forsaken, a legacy that lives on in the eyes and the determination of one young warrior, Cassie Moa. From the hushed murmurs of the pack's elders, a long-forgotten narrative unfolds. Cassie, the daughter of the alpha who once spurned love and left her mate broken and pregnant, was born into a turbulent world. Her beginnings were marked by isolation and the heavy burden of a history marred by rejection. Yet, within her burned an unquenchable fire, a fierce strength that set her apart as the finest warrior in her pack. With every graceful yet determined stride, Cassie carried with her not only the physical might of a seasoned fighter, but also the deep internal struggle born of unspoken truths. Her story is more than a chronicle of battles. It is an odyssey of the heart, a constant duel between destiny and desire. Picture a crisp evening, where the fading light of dusk carves long, brooding shadows across a rugged landscape. In this hour of quiet desolation, Cassie returns from a rigorous training session. Her boots, worn smooth by countless treks, click softly against the ancient wood of her home's doorway. A habitual kiss to her mother greets her arrival, yet that moment, usually simple and tender, shatters into a painful mosaic of tears and half-whispered words. Something is different tonight. The very air seems to pulse with anticipation, as if the night itself holds a secret too heavy to speak aloud. Her mother's unexpected tears, rare and enigmatic, speak volumes without uttering a single word. Amid the routine of setting down a battered backpack and easing into the comforting embrace of an aged recliner, an unspoken question emerges, one that has haunted the corridors of their family for years. Who is the one whose eyes, glimpsed only in fleeting dreams and desperate whispers of the wind, may soon change everything? Could it be that the enigmatic figure, whose silent promise of love lurks at the fringe of her vision, is the key to unlocking the scars of a long-forgotten past? This internal discord is not new to Cassie. It is a legacy deeply woven into her being, manifesting in every stolen glance, every breath held in the anticipation of meeting the face that destiny once marred. There exists within her the quiet rebellion of the Forsaken, an unyielding determination to rise above the pain, to seek a truth that might not yet be written in the stars. Yet, the path ahead is shrouded in mystery, thick with the weight of whispered legends and the chill of an ancient curse. It is a path where the remnants of an alpha's rejection echo as a solemn reminder. The past, no matter how deeply buried, never truly dies. The pack's history is embroidered with secrets and scars. The very foundation of their existence pivots on the delicate balance between strength and sorrow, between the ferocity of battle and the fragility of the human heart. In this world, each heartbeat is a defiant drum against fate, a rhythm that reminds every soul that they are bound not only by blood and duty, but also by an ineffable connection to the lunar deity known as Luna. Her gentle yet inscrutable influence is a beacon of hope for those who have suffered loss and betrayal, offering the possibility of a second chance, a glimmer of forgiveness in a universe that often seems indifferent to despair. As Cassie moves through her evening, her mind swirls, with thoughts of the mysterious eyes that have haunted her dreams. They are not merely a reflection of beauty, but rather a promise, one that holds the potential to mend what was once irreparably broken. This promise is whispered in every rustle of the leaves and carried by the murmuring stream that cradles the forest floor. It is in these quiet, reflective moments that Cassie finds both solace and an urgent, almost painful curiosity. There is a magnetic pull toward an unknown future. A future where destiny might finally intertwine the fragmented pieces of her heritage into a whole, unified tapestry. The night deepens, and the glow of moonlight spills softly over the rugged terrain, casting a silver luminescence that seems to beckon the lost soul's home. Cassie stands at the precipice of a transformative journey where the silent sorrows of the past will be challenged by the fervent hopes of tomorrow. Within her, the force of the Forsaken Alpha's legacy simmers beneath her steady exterior, urging her to uncover the truth that lies hidden behind every tear, every whispered secret. And so, as the chill of the night embraces her, and the whisper of fate grows louder in the silence, Cassie takes her first tentative steps toward a new destiny, one where the echoes of a rejected past may finally give way to the promise of unconditional love and redemption. In this world of ancient pack rituals, where every heartbeats resonate with both pain and promise, she stands alone yet unbreakably determined, her spirit a beacon of mystery, strength, and the unyielding pursuit of her rightful place in a family that defied destiny. What will the secrets of the past reveal? How will the enigmatic eyes that have haunted her dreams shape her future? The journey is just beginning, and the echoes of the Forsaken still linger, inviting you to listen closely, to feel deeply, and to share in the triumph of an extraordinary legacy reborn in the heart of a warrior. A day in the life of a warrior. Cassie's day begins long before the sun claims the sky, with a quiet determination that fuels every stride she takes. As the first hint of dawn colors the horizon in pale gold, she laces up her battered sneakers, a bay testament to countless miles run and battles fought. There's a certain poetry in the rhythmic tap of her boots on the gravel path, each step a silent drumbeat celebrating resilience. For Cassie, these early morning miles are not just physical training, but a meditative ritual that prepares her body and sharpens her mind for the challenges ahead. Returning from a grueling training session that pushed her strength to its limits, Cassie's journey home is marked by the familiar cadence of a warrior's routine, a mix of determination and worn comfort. The road back is a winding path through sleepy neighborhoods, where the clamor of distant alarms and quiet conversations blend into a soothing symphony. Even as the world outside remains unaware of the fierce spirit within her, Cassie's mind is alive with reflection, each heartbeat echoing memories of old conflicts and secret hopes. As she approaches her modest home, a place where tradition and modernity intertwine, Cassie is greeted by the warmth of routine. She slips off her well-worn boots by the door, their echoes fading into the soft murmur of a settling evening. Her movements are practiced and deliberate, every gesture a blend of discipline and lingering fatigue. With a swift glance at the faded family photos adorning the hallway, she offers a gentle nod that speaks of gratitude for the strength passed down through generations. Yet that evening holds an unexpected weight. Just as she sets her backpack down on a familiar, time-worn chair, an unusual sound interrupts the standard rhythm of her arrival. A soft, muffled sob, intermingled with the clatter of a telephone. Cassie's heart stutters as she hears her mother's voice, thick with emotion, over the line. It's a sound she rarely hears, a sound of vulnerability hidden beneath a facade of stoicism. The phone call, meant for routine reassurance, has transformed into a cry laden with anguish. For a fleeting moment, the steady cadence of her life falters, and Cassie is left grappling with a torrent of conflicting emotions. Her thoughts race. How could a simple call carry so much sorrow? In the quiet solitude of her home, where every corner is imprinted with the echoes of her past, the unexpected sound of her mother's tears disrupts the orderly narrative of her day. For Cassie, accustomed to channeling her pain into relentless training, this vulnerable moment becomes an unwelcome reminder of family scars that refuse to fade. The contrast between the stark discipline of her warrior life and the raw, unshielded grief of her home is jarring, a collision of strength and fragility. Despite the internal turmoil, She quickly masks her worry with the practiced poise of a fighter. Steeling herself, Cassie moves to prepare for the evening ahead, brushing off the sting of uncertainty as she changes into a clean set of athletic attire. In her mind, every chore and every moment holds an urgency to outpace the creeping shadows of doubt. Yet, beneath the surface of carefully measured actions, the emotional disturbance lingers. A quiet, insistent reminder of the cost of family secrets and the unhealed wounds of the past. Throughout the day, Cassie's routine is punctuated by these moments of reflective dissonance. As she takes time to stretch her muscles in the fading light, the warmth of the sun serves as a counterpoint to the internal chill that her mother's tears have left behind. Her thoughts become a steady stream of determination, mixed with quiet introspection. She wonders if the silent sorrow that has shattered her routine might signal the beginnings of something more, a long-awaited reckoning with the past that could alter everything she believed about her family's legacy. In the kitchen, as she prepares a simple meal to refuel her exhausted body, the familiar smells of home, freshly brewed coffee, sizzling spices, and the comforting aroma of homemade bread, offer her a temporary reprieve from the emotional storm. Each bite is measured and deliberate, a brief return to normalcy amid the undercurrents of pain and promise. Yet, even as she mechanically sets the table and tidies the quiet living room, the vivid images of her morning replay in her mind like a looping film. The bright, relentless pace of training merged with the subtle, haunting wail of a phone call that promised more questions than answers. Even as the day wears on, Cassie finds herself drifting between the demands of a warrior's discipline and the tender pull of her family's lingering grief. Her inner conflict is a private battle, a war fought not with physical might, but with the strength of a heart that has seen too much loss and longs for healing. Every action, every routine gesture, becomes charged with meaning. The echo of her mother's voice, mingled with the soft whispers of the wind outside, forms a backdrop of unresolved emotions that she can neither dismiss nor fully embrace. By evening, as shadows lengthen and the sky transforms into a deep canvas of indigo and silver, Cassie retreats to a quiet corner of her home to confront the day's dualities. In this solitude, the rhythmic pulsation of distant wind chimes and the soft, insistent drumming of her own breath create a meditative space for reflection. Here, in the dim glow of twilight, she allows herself a moment of genuine vulnerability, a silent acknowledgement of the pain hidden beneath her unwavering exterior. It is in these rare, intimate moments that Cassie realizes the truth of her existence. That being a warrior is not only about mastery over one's body, but also about courage in facing the wounds of the heart. The day, with its delicate interplay of action and introspection, is a testament to the extraordinary life Cassie leads. It is a life defined not just by the fierce battles fought on the training field, but also by the quiet, internal struggles that shape her soul. In the gentle reconciliation of routine and raw emotion, she finds a fragile hope, a possibility, that one day, the sorrow that disrupts her days might transform into healing power, forging a legacy that transcends the pain of rejection and the shadows of the past. As the night deepens, and Cassie gazes out into the starry expanse, her thoughts are filled with questions that stir the soul. Can a single moment of vulnerability redefine a lifetime of resilience? Will the echoes of a forsaken past finally yield to the promise of redemption? In these quiet moments, her life as a warrior is not just a chronicle of physical feats, but a profound journey of the heart. A journey that beckons those who dare to listen, to feel, and to believe in the power of unwavering hope. A phone call that changed everything. Just as the remnants of a long, disciplined day began to settle into routine, the shrill ring of the telephone shattered the fragile peace. Cassie's heart skipped a beat as she glanced toward the device, a sound so out of place amidst the quiet normalcy of her home. With a reluctant sigh, she answered, her voice soft yet laced with an underlying tension. "Hello?" she whispered cautiously, half expecting nothing. yet knowing deep down that this call was destined to alter the course of her day. On the other end came a voice heavy with years of suppressed emotion and overdue revelation. Her grandfather's voice. It carried the weight of secrets long buried. The sound of sorrow mingled with the fragile hope of an overdue reunion. "Cassie, my dear, it's time. It's time we finally face what has been hidden for so long." For a brief moment, the only sound was the steady hum of the line and the distant echo of Cassie's own racing heartbeat. She could almost hear the sound of distant memories stirring within her. Her mind flickered with images of a past filled with rejection, unspoken sorrows, and the mystery that had haunted her family for years. "Grandpa?" Cassie's voice broke, layered with both apprehension and curiosity. "What do you mean? What's happened?" A pause, heavy with unsaid truths, filled the air. "Your mother and I, we have ended what we once called our union. The divorce is final, Cassie. And there's more. It's time we all come together, your family, our pack, to face the past head-on and begin to heal," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Each word was measured, yet each carried a storm of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. Cassie's thoughts spun faster than she could fathom. What did this mean for their family? The idea of confronting the ghosts of a rejection, so long past, was both terrifying and necessary. But Grandpa? "Why now?" she asked, her tone a mix of disbelief and the raw need for answers. "Because, my dear, the past can no longer be contained," he replied, his voice resonating with a quiet urgency. "Your mother's tears, those rare, painful drops you heard earlier, they speak of a grief too deep to bear in silence. It is time to bridge that gap." The words hung in the air, heavy with the implication of a long-forgotten pain resurfacing. Cassie looked at her mother, whose eyes were glistening with restrained sorrow as she listened to the conversation from a nearby room. The sound of her mother's soft, trembling voice filtered through as she interjected, "We must face it, Cassie. There are things in our history, things that we cannot ignore any longer." Her voice, normally so steady, now bore the unmistakable weight of a secret that has haunted her for years. The tension in the room was palpable. Cassie's mind raced with conflicting questions. Was this the moment when the rejected past would come back to haunt them? Would the scars of her mother's rejection and the bitter decisions of a long-gone alpha finally find their resolution? And what of her own identity? Torn between the legacy of a forsaken family and the promise of healing. Will this reunion mend the bonds that have been broken? Cassie managed to ask in a trembling tone, her voice caught between hope and despair. Or will it shatter what little harmony we have left? The words, barely above a whisper, carried an earnest plea for understanding, a silent call for the clarity of truth that had long been obscured by hurt and silence. Her grandfather's response was measured yet tender, a voice that seemed to carry decades of wisdom. "Cassie, sometimes confronting the harshest truths is the only way to clear the path for tomorrow. We have waited too long, and now it is time for an honest reckoning. Your mother deserves to have the burden of her past lifted, and you, my dear, must choose whether to rise above it." Every syllable from the phone seemed to reawaken the ghosts that had once slept in the shadows of their lineage. The notion of a family gathering, a reunion where every broken piece might finally be mended, sparked conflicting emotions within her. Cassie could almost visualize the faces of distant relatives she had only heard about in hushed tones, and she wondered, would the bitter memories of rejection resurface during this encounter? Would the long-avoided conversation between her estranged father and her grieving mother shatter the fragile truce of silence that had kept their family together all these years? In that charged moment, the room seemed to grow colder, yet lit with the promise of a new beginning. As the conversation wound down, her grandfather's final words echoed in her ear. "Prepare yourself, Cassie. Tomorrow we come together not only as a family, but as survivors of a legacy that demands healing. We must listen to the echoes of our past to forge the strength we need for the future. As the call ended, a heavy silence enveloped the house. Cassie stood motionless for a long, agonizing moment, feeling the conflicting pull of dread and anticipation. Every step toward the future now seemed burdened with the weight of secrets and old wounds, a challenge that demanded not only her strength as a warrior, but also her courage to face the painful truths that lay buried deep within her family's history. The shattering call had set in motion an inevitable reunion, a gathering that promised both confrontation and reconciliation. The atmosphere was charged with uncertainty. Every heartbeat whispered the question, what does this mean for us? Deep within, Cassie wondered if this new chapter could finally bring closure, or if it would only reopen old scars. Yet, as uncertain as the future may be, one thing was clear. Their family's legacy, forged in the fires of rejection and hardship, would now face its fate head-on, no matter how devastating or redemptive the truth might be. Escaping into the night, after the shattering phone call echoed through her mind, Cassie moved with an urgency she hadn't felt in years. The routine that had once grounded her now felt like a trap, and with the heavy weight of impending family reunion pressing upon her, she knew it was time to break free, even if just for a few hours. With a quick, determined sigh, she tossed her well-worn training gear into a duffel bag. Every zipper pull and button fasten was a small act of defiance against the chaos threatening to upend her carefully ordered world. Her training session, which she had always eagerly awaited, was abruptly canceled. There would be no more drills or strength tests today. There was only the overwhelming need to escape into the solitude of the night. I can't face him, she murmured to herself as she canceled her session with curt efficiency. The thought of encountering the man whose rejection had once shattered her mother's soul sent a shiver of anxiety crawling down her spine. His name had become synonymous with loss and heartbreak, a scar in her family's history that she was not sure she could bear to see again. Her mind swirled with conflicting images as she hurriedly gathered a few essential items. In a fragmented, internal monologue, she fought with herself. What if I run into him? What if that look, that cold indifference, is waiting just around the corner? The memory of her mother's tear-stained face and the bitter sound of that long-ago rejection were vivid, each recollection fueling her need to disappear from the suffocating present. Once packed, Cassie slipped out the back door into the cool embrace of the twilight. The early night air was a welcome contrast to the heavy tension inside her home, a temporary solace from the pending emotional storm. Without another look back, she set off at a brisk pace, her feet pounding the familiar path that led into the sprawling woods. With each step, the crisp night air began to wash away her frustration, offering a fleeting sense of liberation. The forest enveloped her in its quiet majesty, and every rustle of leaves, every distant chirp of nocturnal life, played like a gentle lullaby. In this natural cathedral, Cassie found a kind of clarity that urban chaos seldom allowed. Her mind, which had just been racing with anxious what-ifs, began to slow down. Here, among the towering trees and soft murmur of the wind, she was simply a warrior on the run, one who sought to find refuge in nature's unhurried, constant rhythm. As she ventured deeper into the woods, the path became a soft carpet of fallen leaves and moss. Her heart, still pounding from the urgency of the departure, now beat in sync with the calm cadence of the forest. Soon, she arrived at a small, glistening stream. The water, cool and refreshing, beckoned her. Cassie slipped off her shoes and dipped her bare feet into the trickling current. In that quiet moment, the world around her seemed to pause. The stream's gentle gurgle and the serene flow of water carried a promise of renewal, a chance to wash away the remnants of today's anxieties. As she sat on a smooth, time-worn rock by the bank, Cassie closed her eyes, allowing herself a rare moment of vulnerability. Thoughts tumbled through her mind like leaves caught in a gentle whirl. I'm running not just from a reunion, but from the pain of a past that I never wanted to face. What if seeing him brings back every nagging doubt and old scar? The inner turmoil was tangible, a storm hidden beneath a calm exterior. Yet, the stream's soft murmur, like a whisper of hope, urged her on. In the distance, the filter of moonlight painted the forest in silver and blue hues, an otherworldly glow that made the trees seem to sway in a silent waltz of destiny. Then, as if the night itself wished to comfort her, a pair of eyes, mysterious, gentle, and impossibly inviting, briefly caught her own reflected in the water. It was a fleeting vision, one that sent a rush of warmth through her chilled veins. The eyes held a story of their own, mysterious and promising, as if suggesting that despite the darkness of certain past rejections, the possibility of love and connection still lingered in the shadows. Cassie's heart fluttered at the thought. She wondered if these could be the eyes of a future mate, someone who might help heal the irreparable wounds of her lineage. Momentarily, the solitude of the woods did not feel like an escape from her troubled home life, but rather a bridge to a future filled with unknown possibilities. The vision of those eyes, the silent allure of fate captured in a single, shimmering glimpse, stirred something deep within her. It was a reminder that even when the heart is battered by loss, it is also capable of immense rebirth. The stream, the silver moonlight, and the distant sounds of nocturnal creatures merged into a symphony that resonated with a promise of healing. After a long while, the rhythmic gurgling of the water, the peaceful rustling of leaves, and the soft echo of her inner monologue began to knit together into a soothing medley. Cassie felt her anxiety slowly ebbing away, replaced by a cautious optimism. In that natural haven, far from the oppressive tension of family secrets, she reaffirmed her inner strength. The night had given her space, a canvas upon which she could paint a new path, one that might eventually lead back to the family she cared so deeply about, but was too afraid to confront. Reluctantly, as the chill of the approaching night deepened, Cassie stood up. With a final lingering glance at the stream and the mysterious reflection that had ignited her hope, she resolved to take the lessons of this solitude with her. Though the looming reunion promised pain and confrontation, she now carried within her the quiet assurance that even in the darkest hours, there is a subtle light, one that might someday guide her home. With her heart tentatively mended by the whisper of the woods, Cassie began her journey back, each step echoing a newfound determination to face the future, whatever it might hold. Glimpses of destiny by the stream. In the quiet intimacy of the forest, as Cassie sat beside the gently murmuring stream, the world around her seemed to pause in a delicate balance between reality and myth. The soothing, rhythmic gurgle of the water, the rustle of leaves stirred by a tender breeze, and the soft silver glow of the moon combined into an almost sacred lullaby. In that moment, every sound, every sensation, felt as though it carried a hidden message, a whisper from a fate that was as ancient as the forest itself. Cassie closed her eyes, letting her guard fall for just a moment. The cool water ran over her bare feet, and with each ripple on the surface, she sensed a stirring deep within her soul. It was in this serene solitude that the boundaries between the tangible and the mystical blurred. Suddenly, as if summoned by the silent incantations of her heart, her gaze was captured by a pair of enigmatic eyes reflecting in the shimmering water. They were unlike any she had ever seen, one a deep, enigmatic emerald, the other a mesmerizing shade of oceanic blue. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to suspend its relentless march, as the eyes glowed with a light that both soothed and stirred her deepest longings. There was an indescribable depth to them, as though they held centuries of wisdom and untold secrets, a promise of connection that reached beyond mere words. Her breath caught as a soft shiver ran along her spine, and in that suspended moment, Cassie felt as though the eyes were peering directly into the inner recesses of her being. They evoked a flood of sensations, a mingling of wonder and quiet anticipation, tempered by the raw vulnerability of her past. Every nerve, every heartbeat, whispered the possibility that these eyes might belong to her destined mate, someone who could mend the fissures left by generations of heartache. In that magical instant, the lore of her kind welled up in her mind. Among the werewolves, the mate system was revered as both a sacred bond and a profound responsibility. Every werewolf had one true mate, a connection that transcended time and space, sealed by the celestial guidance of the moon goddess Luna. It was said that before the fateful meeting, one would first catch a glimpse of their future mate's eyes for an entire month, a period of subtle, lingering magic that prepared both hearts for the union to come. Luna, with her gentle, enigmatic grace, was the benevolent guardian of these destined unions. She watched over them from her celestial realm, bestowing her quiet blessings on those brave enough to surrender to the mysteries of fate. The moonlight filtering through the boughs of the forest had an almost tangible quality, as if it carried Luna's soft caresses and the timeless promise of renewal. In that quiet glow, the lore of the mate system came alive, shimmering around her like a delicate, luminescent veil. Cassie's thoughts became a slow, mesmerizing chant as she absorbed the significance of the vision. Could these eyes truly be a sign of my destined connection? She wondered, her inner voice merging with the soft murmurs of the stream. The moment was both gentle and powerful, a reminder that even in the midst of personal turmoil and long-hidden pain, the universe had a way of offering hope and guidance. Every sensory detail around her was charged with this mystical promise. The cool caress of the water against her skin, the earthy aroma of damp moss and rich soil, and the soft, rhythmic whisper of nocturnal creatures all contributed to an atmosphere that was deeply intimate and profoundly otherworldly. It was as though nature herself was crafting a backdrop for destiny, each element in harmonious balance to herald the arrival of something extraordinary. As the enchanting reflection of those mysterious eyes danced upon the surface of the stream, Cassie felt her heart swell with a quiet resolve. The compelling mix of beauty and mystery stirred an inner clarity, an understanding that every twist and turn in her journey was meant to lead her to this very moment. The vision was not just a beautiful coincidence. It was a stirring call from Luna, urging her to embrace her path, to seek out the mate who was destined to stand by her side, to heal the wounds of generations long past. Slowly, the vision faded, leaving behind a lingering afterimage, a soft, echoing glow that seemed to intertwine with the gentle flow of the stream. The sudden absence of those piercing eyes left a quiet, profound impact on Cassie. She opened her eyes, and though the fluid surface now returned to its natural course, she felt as if part of her had been touched by something ineffable, something that would forever alter the rhythm of her life. In that brief, yet eternal moment, the mysteries of the mate bond and the protective benevolence of Luna intermingled with her own hopes and fears. The forest, the stream, and the moonlight all whispered a singular truth. That destiny, with its ineffable beauty and unpredictable power, was guiding her toward a future that promised both healing and connection. And as Cassie slowly rose from the cool stone, determined to carry that quiet, luminous promise with her, she knew that her journey was far from over. For within her lay the potential not only for personal redemption, but for the profound, life-changing love that could mend even the deepest scars, a love that was waiting to be discovered, hidden in the depths of destiny's shimmering gaze. Dinner. Tension and unspoken histories. The grand dining room of the pack's ancestral home pulsed with an uneasy energy as Cassie stepped inside. Soft ambient light poured over aged wooden tables and mismatched chairs that had witnessed years of secrets and silent grievances. The late afternoon sun, filtered through stained glass windows, painted the room in hues of amber and gold. Yet behind the warm facade, an undercurrent of tension simmered quietly. Cassie's arrival did not go unnoticed. As she crossed the threshold, Every eye in the room seemed to momentarily shift in her direction. The chatter hushed, replaced by a weighted silence in which every whisper of the past seemed to echo. Her presence, a living reminder of an age-old rejection and broken promises, stirred up memories that many had tried to lock away. "Good evening, Cassie." Her mother greeted her with a polite yet strained smile, her voice soft as if trying to soothe the tension that hung in the air, yet the tone did little to mask the sorrow and anger underlying her words. Cassie returned the greeting with a nod, her eyes scanning the room for familiar faces, and perhaps, inadvertently, for hidden resentments that threatened to break the fragile civility. At the head of the table sat the Alpha, a man whose presence commanded both respect and fear. His eyes, dark and steady, held memories of a time when decisions cut deep and love was a scarce, precious commodity. It was in that look, both weary and sharp, that Cassie saw the embodiment of a past that refused to be forgotten. Conversation resumed tentatively as platters of hearty southern fare were passed around. The aroma of slow-cooked meats, tangy sauces, and freshly baked bread filled the room, clashing softly with the bitter taste of unresolved history. Between polite exchanges and measured conversation, subtle glances revealed unspoken grievances. At one table, a distant cousin muttered a barely audible remark that hinted at wounds never fully healed from the Alpha's long-ago rejection. At another, an elder fidgeted with his napkin, lost in his own troubled thoughts. Each heartbeat in that dining room seemed to pulse with the weight of unvoiced regrets and the collective memory of a family divided by past mistakes. Cassie found herself caught in the middle of it all, torn between the desire for familial reconciliation and the painful reminder of what had been lost. As the Alpha spoke in a measured, controlled tone, he recounted the need for this reunion with carefully chosen words that balanced authority with sorrow. "We gather tonight not merely to share a meal, but to remember, to forgive, and to find a way forward," he said, his voice resonating through the stillness. His statement, though delivered with a sense of duty, carried the heavy burden of history, of a rejection that had left deep scars, especially on Cassie's mother. The tension thickened when a clink of silverware momentarily punctuated the silence. Cassie's thoughts raced as she recalled the haunting stories of a forsaken mate and a family shattered by an Alpha's cold rejection. The dining room, with its polished surfaces and soft, welcoming light, became a stage upon which old wounds were silently reopened. What does it truly mean to reconcile with a past that refuses to fade? She wondered silently, her inner voice barely a murmur against the backdrop of strained politeness. As dinner progressed, the conversation shifted from light anecdotes about recent pack achievements to the subtle, charged exchanges about long-hidden grievances. A gentle nod here, a barely perceptible shake of the head there. Each small gesture was a silent acknowledgement of the hurt that had once divided their family. Even as laughter occasionally bubbled up around the table, it was mingled with a poignant tension, reminding everyone that beneath the smiles lay stories of loss and regret. At one point, as her mother delicately attempted to steer the conversation toward hopeful plans for the future, the Alpha interjected with a sigh, heavy with regret. "There are histories here that we cannot simply ignore," he admitted, his tone low enough that only a few could catch the truth in his words. The confession rippled through the room like a sudden gust of wind, leaving behind a fragile calm where every soul was left to wonder if the wounds of the past might finally be healed, or if they would reopen all over again with renewed force. Cassie's heart tightened as she listened to the subtle interplay of voices, each remark, each pause, layered with years of unspoken stories. In that charged atmosphere, even the act of breaking bread took on a sacred, almost ritualistic significance. Every bite of food, every sip of water, was not only nourishment, but also a symbol of the hope that perhaps, through these moments of shared vulnerability, the fractures in their family could one day mend. The Alpha's gaze fell briefly on Cassie, and in that moment, their eyes met, a silent exchange loaded with meaning. she saw in his steady stare both the burden of his past choices and a glimmer of yearning for redemption. It was a look that asked unspoken questions. Can forgiveness ever truly erase the echoes of rejection? And is there a way to move forward when the past remains a constant, haunting presence? Even as the dinner wore on, the tension never quite dissipated. The room was a living tapestry of conflicting emotions, a blend of sorrow, hope, and the quiet courage required to face painful truths. Cassie felt the weight of their shared history pressing down, yet she also sensed an opportunity, a chance, however fragile, to begin the difficult process of healing. In that dining room, under the soft glow of evening light, every whispered word and every lingering glance carried the potential for transformation. The dinner was not merely a meal. It was a battleground of hearts, where the forces of love and loss collided. It was a moment of reckoning, a silent promise that the time for hiding in the shadows was over, and the time for facing the truth, however painful, had finally come. As the plate slowly emptied and the conversation dwindled into thoughtful silence, Cassie sat quietly at the table, absorbing every nuance of the scene. The tension, the unresolved histories, and the unspoken hopes all mingled into a single, profound moment. A moment that, she knew, would forever change the way her family remembered the past. And as she prepared herself for the difficult days ahead, a quiet determination began to well within her. This dinner, with all its raw intensity, was just the beginning of a journey toward uncovering truths, mending broken bonds, and perhaps in time, finding a way to forgive the ghosts that had long haunted them all. A trip back through time. The conversation at dinner had barely settled when a surprising request emerged, a request that would force Cassie to confront a painful fragment of her family's past. In a hushed exchange later that evening, her father, the once rejected Alpha, stated in a measured tone, "We need to visit the Black Moon Pack tomorrow at noon." His words, though few, resonated like a knock on a long-forgotten door, stirring up a turbulent blend of anger, curiosity, and discomfort within Cassie. Her mind immediately raced back to those heart-wrenching stories of rejection and abandonment, rejection that not only had shattered her mother's spirit, but had also shadowed every moment of their lives ever since. The mere thought of meeting the man who, years ago, callously turned his back on love, sent a shiver down her spine. Why now? Cassie wondered, her internal monologue a jumble of resentment and tentative hope. Is it time to face the ghosts of our past? Or is it merely another challenge imposed upon my already burdened heart? Later in the quiet of her room, as the moonlight spilled softly through the window, Cassie sought solace in writing down her feelings. Each word on the paper trembled with the weight of unresolved memories and the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. She recalled the grim tone in her father's voice during dinner, a tone that betrayed no emotion, yet echoed with remorse and a desire for closure. That simple directive to visit the Black Moon Pack felt like a turning point, one that could potentially mend old wounds or reopen them all over again. In the early hours of the next day, with a heavy heart and burning questions, Cassie turned to her mother. In the quiet intimacy of the dimly lit kitchen, she asked softly, "Mom, why does Dad want us to go back there? What does he hope to find?" Her voice, although gentle, carried a tremor of both fear and unresolved anger. Her mother's, eyes tired yet resolute, met hers. "Cassie, your father has been carrying that burden for a long time. He believes that confronting his past with the Black Moon Pack might be the only way for him to finally let go of his regrets." Her words were succinct, but layered with pain. "I know it hurts to think about what he did, but he also thinks that facing it directly might allow us to all move forward, even if it means reopening old wounds for a moment." The simplicity and candor in her mother's response struck Cassie deeply. She felt torn between her own inner anger toward the man who had so callously rejected her mother and the faint glimmer of curiosity, an inquisitiveness about whether this journey might finally explain the painful void that had defined so much of her childhood. "So, you're saying he hopes this visit will change something? For all of us?" she asked, her tone a balance of skepticism and longing for healing. Her mother nodded slowly. "Yes, dear. He hopes that by reuniting with those he once left behind, there may be a chance for redemption. But I won't lie to you. The thought of meeting him again fills me with discomfort and apprehension. I remember how your mother cried, how her eyes told a story of betrayal and loneliness. The room seemed to fill with the weight of unspoken histories, as if the very air was laden with the sorrow of years past." Cassie's thoughts churned as she considered her mother's words. "I can't help but feel a burning anger inside," she admitted quietly. "Anger for the man who once rejected a love that was all he ever really needed to give." Her voice wavered between resentment and a desperate need to understand. "But there's also this strange pull, a curiosity that maybe, just maybe, there might be a way for us to finally heal. I'm afraid of his cold gaze, but I'm equally fearful of letting this shadow haunt us forever." Her mother reached out, placing a gentle hand on Cassie's arm. "I know, sweetheart. It's a complicated tangle of hurt and hope. This journey, back to the Black Moon Pack, isn't just about facing him. It's about us confronting our shared past. It's about understanding that while the wounds run deep, acknowledging them is the only way to begin healing." In that moment, as the weight of the impending reunion settled on both of them, Cassie felt the enormity of what lay ahead. The invitation to revisit the Black Moon Pack was more than a simple family errand. It was a voyage back through time, to a period marked by betrayal and bitterness, but also by the possibility of unexpected redemption. It was a call to examine every nuance of her lineage, to peel back layers of silent suffering, and to finally ask the questions that had haunted her every waking moment. "I'm still not sure I'm ready," Cassie confessed, her eyes glistening with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "Every time I think about it, I see his face, that look of cold indifference, and it makes my skin crawl. But I also know that if we keep avoiding it, these wounds will never truly close." Her mother's eyes softened with compassion. "You are strong, Cassie. Stronger than you know. This trip may be painful, but it might also be the key to releasing the hold that the past has on our hearts. It's not about forgiving overnight or erasing all the pain, but about taking that first difficult step towards a future where these unspoken histories no longer control us." As the conversation tapered off, silence fell between them. Not an empty silence, but one filled with the heavy promise of what's to come. Each heartbeat in that soft, shared space was a reminder of the journey they were about to undertake, a journey that promised to be as treacherous as it was necessary. The prospect of reuniting with the Black Moon Pack, of facing the man who had once rejected love so callously, sparked a chain of conflicting emotions in Cassie. Anger, fear, curiosity, and a tentative hope twined together within her. As she prepared herself for the day ahead, every breath she took was laced with the uncertainty of whether this trip would finally bring closure or only deepen the scars of the past. In the quiet aftermath of that emotionally charged conversation, Cassie resolved that whatever the outcome, she would face it head-on. The request to visit the Black Moon Pack was a journey through time, one that promised to challenge everything she thought she knew about her family's history and her own identity. And so, with a heavy heart and a spirit both defiant and fragile, she braced herself for the trip back through time, the ultimate test of healing, reconciliation, and the strength of a legacy that had long been marred by unspoken pain. Soaring into uncertainty, stepping into the private jet felt surreal, like entering a world that was meant for the elite, yet it only magnified the heavy churn of uncertainty within Cassie. The sleek, polished interior of the jet greeted her, with an atmosphere of luxury and refined comfort. Plush seats, crisp white surfaces, and soft ambient lighting transformed every inch of the cabin into an oasis of opulence. For most, such surroundings would inspire a sense of calm and unbridled excitement at the prospect of travel. But for Cassie, every polished detail amplified the contrast between the external veneer of perfection and the internal storm of doubt and anticipation that roiled beneath the surface. As she stepped aboard, Cassie couldn't help but let her gaze roam over the meticulously arranged cabin. A wry smile tugged at the corners of her lips as she noted the stark irony. Here she was, a fierce warrior with a legacy of rejection and hidden family secrets, forced into the lap of luxury. "I never thought I'd see the day," she mused under her breath, her tone simultaneously humorous and wistful. Yet the comfort of the soft leather seat and the hum of the jet's engines couldn't quiet the inner dialogue that relentlessly questioned, "Am I really ready for what lies ahead?" Settling into her seat by the window, she pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching as the ground hurried away beneath the descending dusk. The landscapes below, a patchwork of cities and quiet farmland, seemed almost inconsequential compared to the emotional distance she felt from her own past. The smooth roar of the engines provided a strange kind of lullaby, a constant, rhythmic reminder that, while the physical distance from home was growing, the unresolved echoes of her family's history were catching up just as quickly. Inside, Cassie's thoughts raced in tandem with the steady acceleration of the jet. Every mile soaring above the clouds was punctuated by conflicting emotions. She found herself laughing quietly at the absurdity of it all. Here she was, cocooned in luxury, yet her heart was weighed down by memories of tearful phone calls, bitter family reunions, and the pain of a rejection that had haunted her since childhood. Who knew that comfort could feel so lonely, she thought, the question hanging in the sterile air of the cabin. It was a question that spoke of the paradox of her existence, being surrounded by indulgence, yet yearning for the simple solace that only true emotional clarity could bring. The plush interior of the jet offered moments of distraction. A perfectly arranged tray of gourmet snacks, a selection of fine wines, and even a well-stocked library tucked away in a quiet corner of the cabin. Cassie picked up a book, its pages glossy and inviting, yet even as she flipped through the pages, her mind kept drifting back to the call that had shattered her routine and the looming family reunion. She mused with a tinge of humor that perhaps the jet's luxurious silence was like a prelude to a storm, a deceptive calm before a cascade of long-overdue revelations. In that moment, the disconnect between the external allure of glamour and her internal turmoil became almost tragically comical. As the jet soared higher, Cassie's gaze fixed on the vast, endless sky above, a canvas of deep blue slowly deepening into the black of night, sprinkled with the twinkle of countless stars. In that sweeping vista, there was a profound sense of both possibility and isolation. Every star seemed to shine with a promise of a better future, yet at the same time, each one was a silent witness to every secret of her troubled past. It was as if the cosmos were urging her forward, while also cautioning her that the journey toward reconciliation was fraught with uncertainty. Caught in this reverie, Cassie felt an involuntary shiver of anticipation. The quiet luxury of the jet, with its understated elegance, became more than just a mode of travel. It became a metaphor for her current state of being. The high-powered engines, meticulously engineered for smooth flight, mirrored the calculated efforts she had to muster to keep her emotions in check. Every subtle vibration of the plane was a reminder that beneath the curated calm was a storm of unresolved pain and bitter memories. Her internal monologue grew more urgent as she considered the day ahead. The family reunion, the long-awaited visit to reconnect with relatives from a past cloaked in rejection and silence, loomed on the horizon. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself, the word heavy with both dread and hope. Tomorrow might finally hold the answers, or, at the very least, a chance to finally lay these burdens to rest. The anticipation was palpable. It wove through her thoughts like an unyielding thread that tied her not only to her own destiny, but also to the legacy of a family that had long been fractured by unspoken grievances. Between these swirling thoughts, Cassie allowed herself a brief moment of humor. She thought about how incongruous it was to be surrounded by the finest amenities, yet feeling as if she was in a scruffy, makeshift camp, hiding from the ghosts of her past. Maybe I should pack an extra pair of running shoes for my emotional marathon tomorrow, she joked quietly, a small, ironic smile breaking through her furrowed brow. The quieter moments on the jet also afforded her a time to reflect on what she might say when faced with her estranged father and the other members of the Black Moon Pack. Every detail, every unresolved question, demanded an answer. Am I strong enough to confront him? And what if the truth is even more painful than I can imagine? These questions mingled with the crisp air outside the window, where the world below receded into the mystery of night. And so, as the jet continued its smooth ascent into the unknown, Cassie sat back, a picture of tranquil determination on the surface, even as her inner world churned with restless emotions. The luxurious surroundings, the steady hum of the engines, and the vast, unfathomable sky all conspired to create a perfect yet ironic capsule of isolation. In that moment of soaring uncertainty, she realized that, like the jet navigating through the clouds, she too was on an unpredictable journey, one where every mile brought her closer to a confrontation with the past, and possibly to the healing redemption she had so desperately sought. With one final, resolute glance out at the starlit horizon, Cassie promised herself that tomorrow would not be merely another day. Instead, it would be the day she faced the echoes of her family's darkest secrets, armed with nothing but her own unwavering spirit and the fragile hope that, even in the most opulent surroundings, the truth would eventually set her free. Welcomed by the pack, the airport buzzed with a mix of excitement and subdued anticipation as Cassie stepped off the private jet. The sleek, modern terminal was abuzz with activity, yet in one corner, far removed from the casual chatter of travelers, an air of quiet intensity lingered, a testament to the deep familial ties and unspoken histories that wove through her pack. Every new face and familiar silhouette she encountered seemed to carry a piece of the past that Cassie had long tried to bury. Cassie moved through the terminal with measured steps, her eyes quickly taking in the details of this reunion. At a polished reception desk near the arrival gates, a confident young man in his early 30s stepped forward. His neatly styled hair and assured smile marked him as one of the pack's betas. "Welcome, Cassie," he said warmly, extending a firm handshake. "I'm James, the beta. We've been eagerly waiting for you." His tone was friendly, yet a subtle gravity in his eyes hinted at the weight of responsibilities he carried for his family. Nearby, a sprightly little girl with bright red hair and curious green eyes shuffled around with a soft demeanor. A gamma figure, she later learned, was named Riley. The child's presence, both charming and surprisingly wise, bridged a gap between generations. Her innocent remarks about the new girl at the pack stirring gentle smiles among those gathered. "You look like you've carried a heavy sky on your shoulders," Riley observed in a whisper that belied her youthful age, a remark that made Cassie pause and wonder about the depth hidden in such simple words. The atmosphere was punctuated by the arrival of other family members, each bearing a distinct air of legacy and lingering secrets. In one corner, an older man with silver hair and deeply lined faces watched over everything like a silent sentinel. His eyes, full of both love and sorrow, locked briefly with Cassie's before he offered a nod of quiet welcome. His presence spoke of many untold stories, battles fought, hearts mended, and regrets that lingered in the shadows of memory. Cassie recognized him as one of the elders, a keeper of the pack's long and storied history, whose aura held both respect and a hint of melancholy. As the group convened near a seating area adorned with rich, dark leather and polished wood accents, soft murmurs of greetings and subtle, knowing glances wove together to create an intimate tapestry of familial connection. "It's good to see you again, Cassie," said an assertive yet kind voice from behind a cluster of neatly arranged chairs. Turning, Cassie met the eyes of a woman with a calm yet piercing gaze. Her gamma, Lily, who appeared to be both a guiding force and a trusted confidant to the pack's leaders. "We've all felt your absence," Lily added, her tone a warm invitation wrapped in layers of history and unspoken understanding. The dialogue flowed naturally between introductions and light-hearted banter, yet every word carried an undercurrent of tension, a tension born of years of silence about past betrayals and the long-ignored pain of rejection. As they made their way along the corridor, the pack members exchanged brief, almost coded phrases, hints of old wounds and promises of forgiveness that lent the air a curious mix of levity and gravity. "There's much history between us, but you, Cassie, are the spark of a new beginning," murmured one of the younger betas almost conspiratorially, drawing a soft smile from her despite the heaviness in her voice. In a quieter moment, away from the immediate bustle, Cassie found herself engaging in a heartfelt conversation with her mother, who was accompanied by another family elder. The dialogue was intimate, its cadence smooth and comforting, yet every word was laden with the significance of past rejections and the slow, painful process of healing. "I know you're anxious about today," her mother confided softly, her eyes wandering to the familial portraits lining the wall. "And I too wonder if facing these old ties will mend what has long been broken. But sometimes, confronting the past is the only way we can truly move forward." The words, simple and direct, resonated deeply within Cassie, each syllable stirring a mixture of anger, sorrow, and hopeful curiosity. Even as the group prepared for departure, the subtle hints of underlying tension were impossible to ignore. A hushed conversation between a couple of older siblings revealed quiet accounts of long-held grievances, stories of a once-beloved alpha whose rejection had sown bitter seeds throughout the pack. Their voices, a mix of regret and cautious optimism, wove together an unspoken narrative that explained much of the family's current disquiet. Cassie listened intently. Her heart pounded in rhythm with the soft echo of their words, each revelation a reminder that the past was never truly dead, only waiting for the right moment to be unburied. As they gathered near a waiting area that overlooked the tarmac, the pack's collective aura of anticipation grew stronger. Each member's eyes seemed to spark with the unspoken question: what secrets will this reunion unearth? The introductions, casual at first, gradually gave way to more profound exchanges. Every smile, every nod, every lingering look carried its own story, a tapestry of joys, losses, and the shared hope that the future could, somehow, redeem the scars of their past. In that charged, bustling space, Cassie felt a renewed sense of identity and responsibility. Every new face that greeted her was a part of the legacy she bore, and a piece of the intricate puzzle of her family's history. With each interaction, she began to understand that the ties that bound the pack were not just obligations, but sacred connections that could, with time, mend even the deepest wounds. The echo of friendly chatter and subtle, poignant glances led Cassie to an unshakable realization. Amidst these new faces and familiar bonds lay the promise of healing, a chance to rewrite a narrative marred by old rejections. As the group prepared to board a waiting vehicle for the next leg of their journey, Cassie felt a cautious hope begin to bloom within her, intertwined with the lingering tension of unresolved pasts. The airport, with all its transient chaos, had become a portal, a threshold from where she would step once again into the intricate and unpredictable world of her pack, where every face told a story, and every greeting held the potential for redemption. Confrontations and quiet revelations. In the wake of the airport reunion, the air among the pack members grew thick with unspoken emotions. As they settled in a quiet corner of the terminal, the polished veneer of recent greetings began to crack, revealing subtle conflicts simmering beneath the surface. Cassie could feel the tension like an almost tangible weight, a reminder that though the gathering was meant to be a reunion, it was also a forum where past hurts and lingering regrets still echoed. In a quiet alcove away from the bustling main hall, Cassie sat with her mother, their conversation hushed but intense. Her mother's eyes, usually so resilient and determined, now shimmered with a mix of regret and vulnerability that Cassie had rarely seen. "I wish things could have been different," her mother confessed softly, her voice trembling as if releasing years of pent-up pain. "I never imagined we'd be forced to confront these ghosts, but here we are." Cassie's mind raced. In her inner monologue, she grappled with conflicting feelings. Anger at the wounds of the past, mixed with a pressing need to understand and possibly mend them. Can we ever truly escape the shadow of rejection? She wondered. Every time her thoughts drifted to the man who had once cast her mother aside, a chill ran through her, a pain inherited and magnified by time. As their conversation continued, a nearby elder, a man whose lined face spoke of decades of wisdom and sorrow, joined them with measured steps. His tone was gentle, yet laced with an undercurrent of unresolved duty. "There are things we must accept before we can move on," he said, his eyes briefly meeting Cassie's. "Our responsibilities to the pack, and to one another, demand that we confront our losses, however painful they may be." His words, while calm, barely concealed a deep-seated regret that resonated with the entire gathering. Cassie leaned back, absorbing his quiet admonishment, feeling the stir of emotions that flowed like a hidden current among them. "But what if facing these truths only deepens the hurt?" she asked, her voice low and steady, betraying both her apprehension and her fierce determination to find resolution. The elder paused, searching her eyes for an understanding that stretched beyond her youthful defiance. "Healing begins not with forgetting, but with acknowledging," he replied softly. "We owe it to ourselves and to our pack to at least try." Nearby, another family elder, a gentle woman with eyes that had seen both the harshness of fate and the solace of forgiveness, interjected in a quiet tone. "Our traditions teach us that duty and love are two sides of the same coin. Rejection may have left scars, but it also set us on a path to discover our true selves." Her words, although simple, had a calming effect that briefly united the small group in shared acceptance of their burdens. Amid these varied perspectives, quiet, conflicts began to emerge. Cassie's inner voice, bold yet cautious, voiced doubts. "I have always felt caught between a legacy of pain and the desire to break free from it. How can I reconcile the anger I feel with the hope that maybe, just maybe, we can mend these broken bonds?" The thought lingered as she exchanged hesitant glances with her mother, whose own eyes seemed to hide centuries of unspoken grief. A tense silence fell when another voice, one from a younger relative, barely older than Cassie, cut through the quiet, almost questioning their resolve. "Does anyone truly believe that the past can be changed?" the young man asked, his tone a mixture of skepticism and yearning. The question hung in the air, stirring memories of bitter rejection and the unhealed wounds that had defined their family narrative. Cassie's mother, always the pillar of strength, replied with measured firmness. "Change isn't about rewriting what has been lost. It's about learning from it so that our future is not dictated solely by old mistakes." Her words, though resolute, carried an unmistakable tremor, a hint of uncertainty that betrayed her own inner conflicts. Throughout these exchanges, Cassie observed every subtle cue, the fleeting looks, the half-spoken thoughts, and the silent tears that threatened to fall before being swiftly wiped away. The conflicts were quiet and nearly imperceptible, yet they resonated powerfully within her. Each person present carried their own burdens of duty, regret, and a longing to see the pain of the past rendered obsolete by the promise of a new beginning. Her internal monologue grew more layered with each subtle revelation. Every heart here is a battlefield between love and loss. between the relentless pull of duty and the quiet desire for forgiveness. Even as she listened to the older members of her family recount fragments of history, stories filled with hints of rejection and secret hopes, the dialogue built a tapestry of emotions that left Cassie both fascinated and deeply unsettled. As the conversation flowed on, the room gradually filled with a gentle, yet distinct sense of anticipation. The elders' soft admonitions and the younger relatives' bold questions were not meant to divide, but to pave the way for the hard conversations yet to come. Each word, each pause, was a step towards a collective reckoning, a space where true healing might finally begin to take root. In that moment of quiet confrontation, as unresolved pain and shared duty collided, Cassie realized how much each person's story was intertwined with the legacy of the pack. It wasn't merely a matter of individual grievances. It was a shared heritage, sculpted by generations of decisions both cruel and compassionate. In this interlude of subtle conflicts, the seeds of understanding were slowly being sown. With the murmurs of unresolved tension gradually giving way to a tentative commitment to face their past, the group dispersed, leaving Cassie with a deep, reflective silence. The crisp, unsettling air of conflict mingled with a fragile hope. A hope that perhaps, by confronting the ghosts that haunted them, each member of the pack could finally find their own path toward forgiveness and renewal. Standing there in the lingering dusk, Cassie felt that the real journey had only just begun. The subtle dynamics, the quiet confrontations, and the revelations that accompanied them formed a complex prelude to the bigger family drama yet to unfold. A drama that promised to challenge every ingrained belief and, in time, transform unspoken pain into a stepping stone towards healing. Words that cut and heal. The long, lingering dinner unfolded like a slow, burning ember, igniting painful memories and fragile hopes as family history, rejection, and past mistakes emerged in candid conversations. Around the long oak table, every face seemed etched with stories of sorrow and redemption, and the air was a delicate mix of anger, regret, and tentative forgiveness. At first, the conversation was measured, a series of polite exchanges punctuated by quiet glances. Then, as the meal progressed and the soft clatter of cutlery became an unspoken background rhythm, the tension thickened. The alpha, his gaze somber and heavy with unspoken remorse, began. "We've carried this burden for too long. Our families. History is marred by old wounds and the sting of rejection. It's time we talked about what happened. And maybe find a way to heal." His words cut through the silence like a knife. Cassie's mother looked down at her plate, and then met her daughter's eyes with a sorrowful determination. "I've been hurt in ways you might not fully understand," she said softly. "The rejection, the decisions made in moments of weakness, it tore our family apart, and I still feel the pain every day." A younger cousin, whose voice trembled with a mix of anger and unresolved hurt, added, "How can we ever move on if we keep hiding behind these secrets? The man who once abandoned love has left scars that run deep." The comment hung in the air, charged with raw emotion. It was as if the table had become a confessional, a place where every unspoken grievance was finally allowed to surface. Cassie listened, her heart pounding in a conflicted rhythm. In the recesses of her mind, she wrestled with the familiar echo of rejection, the bitter taste of the moment that had defined her early years. "I've seen that look before, that cold dismissal that ended a love story. Can forgiveness truly erase that pain?" she silently wondered, the question resonating through her like a steady drumbeat. Then, an elder with wise, tired eyes spoke up in a voice that was both gentle and firm. "We must remember, my dear ones, that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about learning from it. Every word we exchange tonight, every confession, is meant not to reopen old wounds, but to bind them together, so they become less sharp over time. His measured tone offered a fragile olive branch amidst the storm of words. A brief moment of silence followed, punctuated by the soft hum of the overhead lights. Finally, Cassie's mother reached out, her hands trembling as she said, "I know, I've carried my own bitterness for years, but I'm tired of that weight. I want us to find a new way, a path where we can honor the past without being defined by it." There was a pause as her eyes welled up. Then she continued with a quiet strength. "I'm sorry, too, for the hurt you've all endured because of my silence. I should have spoken up sooner." Her apology was simple, yet it cut deep, resonating with the promise of a new beginning. One of her uncles, whose rough exterior masked a heart filled with compassion, nodded and said, "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. That's the first step towards healing. And I admire you for that." His voice, laced with both regret and hope, helped ease the tension that had built up like a storm cloud ready to burst. The conversation then shifted, moving from accusations to more personal reflections. A mid-aged relative, whose eyes shone with tempered anger and sorrow, said, "I still remember that day, the day of the rejection. It was like watching a part of our history crumble right before my eyes. I've carried that image all these years, wondering if we could ever mend what was broken." His words were heavy with the burden of memory, each syllable a reminder of past wounds. Cassie, feeling the weight of these revelations, softly interjected, "I feel it too. There's a part of me that is angry at the pain, the missed opportunities for love and support. But there's also something inside me that wants to believe in forgiveness, that believes we can build something stronger from these fractured pieces." Her admission, quiet and sincere, served as a turning point. The room seemed to breathe a collective sigh, a mix of relief and uncertainty. The Alpha then added, with a tone that blended authority with regret, "I once made a choice that I now see has haunted every one of us. My rejection wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a moment that splintered our bond. I am sorry, truly sorry, if my actions caused you pain that you carry to this day." His words, heavy with sincerity, hung in the air like a benediction. For the first time, there was a glimmer of reconciliation, a fragile thread that offered the possibility of healing. In the midst of this emotional exchange, the conversation softened further. A gentle voice from the back, barely above a whisper, said, "Maybe we can find a way to forgive, to see our past not just as a series of mistakes, but as lessons that have shaped who we are today." The remark, simple yet profound, allowed the room to settle into a tentative calm. The interplay of anger and forgiveness, harsh words, and tender apologies began to meld into a quiet understanding, a promise that even the deepest wounds could, in time, be mended. As the dinner wore on, the dialogue continued in measured tones, each sentence crafted to bridge the divide between old pain and the possibility of future unity. The table, once a battleground of unspoken grievances, slowly transformed into a space for shared reflection. Every conversation, every heartfelt apology, seemed to lighten the heavy air just a fraction, building a hope that maybe the fragments of their fractured history could eventually be pieced together into something whole. Cassie sat quietly, absorbing every word, every gesture of remorse and hope. In her inner thoughts, she held on to the realization that every wound carried the potential for healing, that every cut, no matter how deep, might one day be replaced by a scar that told the story of survival and growth. The dinner conversation was far from over, but with each exchange, each word that both cut and healed, the possibility of forgiveness became a little more tangible. By the time the plates were cleared and soft murmurs of reconciliation floated through the room, it was clear that this was a pivotal moment. The past was not forgotten, but its sting was slowly losing its power. In this delicate balance between confrontation and gentle forgiveness, the family found a fragile new path forward. One where the most hurtful words might one day transform into the very bridges that would lead them toward a brighter future. Dawn of a new day. The dark cloak of night had finally begun to recede, and the soft glow of early morning seeped through the windows of Cassie's room like a gentle promise. Despite the emotional tempest of the previous night, the first light of dawn brought with it an unexpected surge of determination. Cassie had lain awake for what felt like an eternity, her mind a maze of lingering memories and whispered resolutions. Restless sleep had been a constant companion throughout the dark hours, a relentless reminder of the pain and the hope intertwined in her family's past. Yet now, as the horizon blushed with the arrival of a new day, even the deep fatigue could not suppress the subtle spark of renewed energy. In the quiet solitude of her room, Cassie rose slowly. The cool, crisp air of dawn greeted her like a fresh start, washing away the traces of the previous night's emotional storm. Every ray of sunlight that filtered through the gauzy curtains seemed to carry a message, one of renewal, growth, and the promise that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal. The gentle sound of birds returning to life outside her window blended with the steady cadence of her own breath, creating a soothing symphony that edged away her lingering doubts. With a quiet resolve, she began to prepare for the day ahead. Today was different. Today was about confronting challenges head-on. The memory of the heated dinner conversation, filled with raw admissions and tender apologies, still lingered in her mind, but it was now interwoven with a sense of purpose. The family's plan for the day, notably the much-anticipated private meeting with the Alpha, was more than a mere appointment. It was a pivotal step toward reconciliation and healing. This meeting, cloaked in uncertainty but teeming with possibility, represented the thin line between the past's painful grip and the promise of a brighter future. Downstairs, the atmosphere of the house mirrored this transition. The room buzzed lightly with the sound of quiet preparation, a soft murmur of conversation, gentle clinks from the coffee pot, and the rustling of papers as plans were laid out. Cassie's mother, her face marked by the tenderness of last night's revelations, moved with a calm efficiency. "We have to be ready for this," her mother said, as she carefully reviewed the notes for the meeting. The tone in her voice, firm yet compassionate, was a quiet reassurance to everyone present. Each family member seemed to share the unspoken understanding that today was a day for bridging old gaps and forging a united path forward. Cassie herself felt a palpable shift. The heavy introspection of the night had gradually given way to an inner clarity, a determination that she would no longer allow the scars of the past to dictate her future. In the soft light of the new day, her reflection in the mirror revealed a young warrior, not only of physical prowess, but also of emotional strength. There, in her determined eyes, was the glimmer of a future where every painful memory could transform into a stepping stone toward lasting healing. Amidst the morning bustle, Cassie took a moment to sit by the window, gently cradling a warm cup of coffee. The steam curled upward in delicate spirals, mirroring the transient nature of her anxious thoughts that now slowly began to dissipate. "This is our chance," she mused silently. "A chance to turn sorrow into strength and to face the challenges with open hearts." The aroma of the brew and the soft light of dawn worked together as a quiet catalyst, renewing her spirit even as the weight of the past was still etched upon her. Outside, the world was awakening with a sense of urgency. The morning air was filled with a distant hum of activity, a reminder that the external world, with its relentless pace, would soon merge with their own personal journey. The family, now gathered in the living area, discussed the details of the upcoming meeting with quiet, purposeful dialogue. Words were chosen carefully, balancing the need for clarity with the tenderness of shared history. "We need to present a united front," one of the elders remarked, his voice low and steadfast. "We owe it to our ancestors and to ourselves to confront our past head-on." Even as preparations continued, Cassie's inner thoughts churned, with both apprehension and hope. She recalled the dark echoes of rejection that had haunted her for so long, and wondered if this day might finally signal a turning point. Can we truly reconcile with the parts of us that remain broken? Her mind questioned, yet the resolute part of her, honed by years of disciplined training and quiet suffering, refused to yield to fear. With each deep, steady breath, the seeds of determination began to blossom, promising that today was not just another day, but the first step toward a future free from the shadows of old pain. As the clock steadily inched toward the scheduled departure, time for the meeting, the household stirred with an air of determined calm. Family members exchanged encouraging words, each conversation a small pledge to face the impending challenges as a unified front. Cassie joined in, her voice steady as she shared her hopes and worries. "I'm anxious about meeting him again," she admitted softly. "But I also know that only by facing our past can we truly shape our future." In that quiet, purposeful exchange, the interwoven threads of fear, hope, and determination created a tapestry of resilience. The dawn of this new day was more than just a change in time. It was a declaration that, despite the scars of rejection, the light of reconciliation could indeed begin to shine through. And with the soft glow of morning as their witness, the family stepped forward together, ready to meet the challenges ahead with unwavering resolve, and the belief that healing, however gradual, was within their reach. Reckoning with the past, Cassie's heart pounded like a distant war drum as she stepped into the quiet solitude of her estranged father's office. The room, dimly lit by soft desk lamps and the gentle glow of a setting sun filtering through. Heavy drapes, was a world apart from the bustling chaos of the pack. Here, every artifact, the worn leather chair, the ancient wooden desk, and even the muted family portraits hanging on the wall, spoke of decades gone by, of wounds barely healed and stories left unfinished. Her estranged father, the formidable Alpha, sat behind his imposing desk with a gravity in his gaze that seemed to strip away any pretense of a composed demeanor. For a long moment, neither spoke, allowing the heavy silence to swell with years of unspoken pain. Finally, in a voice that wavered between resolve and regret, he began, "Cassie, we have long avoided this conversation. It's time that we face what has haunted us for so many years." His words, simple yet laden with the weight of a shattered past, cut through the air like a brittle shard of glass. Cassie took a steadying breath, her mind swirling with memories of a day that had defined her very existence. The day her mother was rejected and cast aside with the cold finality of an abandoned promise. "Why did you leave?" she demanded softly, her tone equal parts anguish and anger. "Why did you choose to reject the very person who gave you everything?" The question hung in the space between them, raw and unyielding. Her father's eyes, darkened with a depth of sorrow that spoke of innumerable nights filled with regret. "I know I have caused irreparable hurt," he replied, his voice cracking as he confessed. "And for that, I am deeply sorry. My rejection was born of my own weakness, a failure to embrace what I should have cherished." The honesty in his tone was startling, yet it was tempered by the lingering ambiguity of whether that apology could ever heal decades of scars. Cassie listened intently, her inner thoughts a tumultuous mix of resentment and a cautious yearning for understanding. Can an apology mend what has been broken for so long? She wondered silently. Every word from her father was heavy with the ache of the past, memories of cold dismissals, the echo of her mother's silent tears, and an entire history written in the language of regret. "But what about me?" she pressed further, her voice soft yet steady. "I have lived with the consequences of that choice. The burden of knowing my birth was a constant reminder of your failure. How can I believe that things can change?" Her father's gaze softened, and he leaned forward, his hands coming to rest on the desk as if to bridge the physical distance between them. "Cassie, I do not expect forgiveness to be given easily," he said, his tone earnest and pained. "Every day I carry the memory of that moment, the day I lost a chance at a lifetime of love and the opportunity to build a future for us. I was lost in my own bitterness, and my actions have haunted me ever since." His words, though heavy, with remorse, also hinted at a fragile hope for redemption. The silence that followed was not empty, but pregnant with the possibility of change. Across the room, the memories of the past played out in quiet, stubborn details. The cold rejection that had scarred her mother, the whispers of a family torn apart by pride and regret, and the long shadow of an alpha's mistake. Cassie's eyes, glossy with unspoken tears, met her father's, an exchange that conveyed both the deep pain of rejection and a faint, tentative longing for reconciliation. "I have spent my life wondering if things could have been different," her father admitted, his voice dropping to a somber whisper. "If I had only dared to love the way I was meant to, but I know that I cannot change the past. All I can do now is ask for a chance to atone, to slowly rebuild what was shattered." The intensity in the room grew palpable, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Cassie's inner monologue churned with conflicting emotions. Anger, at the wounds inflicted by her father's mistakes. A fragile hope that perhaps time could soften even the harshest memories, and an enduring skepticism that warned her not to be swept away by the tides of sorrow. "Is there truly a path to redemption?" she asked herself, aware of the long road that might lie ahead if she were to accept his apology. Her father continued, his words measured and deliberate. "I understand that my past actions have created a rift, one that has taken years to widen. I do not expect things to return to how they once were, and I cannot ask you to forget the hurt. But I ask you, Cassie, to consider that perhaps in facing this pain, we might find a way to heal together. I want nothing more than to be part of your life, to support you, to protect you, and, if you can ever find it in your heart, to let go of the past that has kept us apart." Every word resonated with both vulnerability and quiet determination. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with the energy of potential transformation, a realization that the meeting was not simply a confrontation of old grievances, but a crucial step toward a future where the family could begin to mend its broken bonds. In that charged moment, with emotions laid bare like fragile parchment, the possibility of reconciliation hovered delicately between despair and hope. Cassie's hands trembled slightly as she considered his words. The conversation had reached a profound intensity, one that demanded a response not just of the lips, but of the heart. I cannot pretend that I have forgotten the pain," she said softly, her voice laced with the raw honesty of someone who had carried a lifetime of hurt. "But maybe, just maybe, there is a way for us to begin anew, slowly, step by step." Her father's eyes glistened with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "That is all I ask," he said quietly, his tone imbued with both sincerity and a lingering doubt. "I cannot undo my mistakes, but I hope that together we can forge a path toward healing, a path that honors our past while allowing us to move forward." The room settled into a weighted silence, each heartbeat echoing with the realization that this moment was both an ending and a beginning. The private meeting, shrouded in the painful history of rejection and the tentative promise of redemption, left Cassie with a deep, introspective question. Could the bridge between her heart and her father's soul ever be rebuilt? Or would the scars of the past forever remain a silent testament to what was lost? In that fragile space, with the ghost of old wounds intermingling with the promise of new beginnings, the uncertain journey toward forgiveness and reconciliation quietly commenced. The meeting was far from resolved, and the path ahead remained, steeped in mystery. Yet, amidst the sorrow, there was a glimmer of hope. a belief that even the deepest of past transgressions might one day soften in the light of honest, heartfelt dialogue. Crossing boundaries and healing wounds, the journey to the border felt like crossing an invisible line between two separate worlds, one steeped in old family honor and regret, the other brimming with the cautious promise of renewal. Cassie and her pack members boarded a modest, weathered vehicle that carried them steadily away from their familiar territory. As the miles unfurled beneath them, the landscape shifted from the dense, familiar woods to wide-open expanses where nothing was hidden beneath the relentless sun. It was as if the road itself demanded that they leave behind the weight of old wounds and step into the possibility of healing. Inside the vehicle, a somber silence reigned. Each person was wrapped in their own reflective thoughts. Cassie, in particular, felt the heavy pull of emotion tugging at her with every passing mile. Memories of past rejections and unspoken grievances welled up in her mind as she stared out the window at the sweeping fields and distant, rugged hills. How will this encounter alter the course of the past and future? She silently wondered, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and underlying dread. Across from her, her mother sat with her eyes fixed on the receding scenery. The tension was almost tangible as she clutched a small, worn notebook, filled with whispered family secrets and half-forgotten promises. Every so often, she would glance at Cassie with a determined yet pained expression, a silent message that there was much at stake in this reunion. The air in the cramped vehicle was thick with unspoken words and the uneasy hope that confronting the past might pave the way for a mending of fractured bonds. As the border neared, the vehicle slowed, coming to a stop at a crossroads marked by rusted signs and an old, faded map. Here, parked under the open sky, was the designated meeting spot, a modest, weather-beaten building that seemed to guard its own secrets of history's past. The atmosphere was charged. Every breath drawn by Cassie and her kin was saturated with both apprehension and the promise of resolution. The moment they disembarked, they were met by a contingent from the visiting Alpha's family. The visitors, clad in dark, polished attire that spoke of authority and lineage, formed a semicircle around the meeting point. Their leader, a man whose presence exuded both pride and regret, stepped forward with a measured nod. "Welcome," he said, his voice resonating with controlled intensity. "Today, we bridge not only physical distance, but the emotional chasm that has divided us for far too long." The encounter was fraught with subtle yet potent tension. Eyes met across the divide, some guarded, others full of hope, and a few laden with the bitterness of years entrenched in old resentments. The Alpha's family exchanged curt, measured greetings with Cassie's pack members. Every handshake, every sideways glance, seemed to carry an entire history, a silent conversation about past grievances, lost opportunities for forgiveness, and the ever-present weight of unhealed wounds. In a quiet corner near the weathered building, Cassie found herself standing with her mother. Their whispered dialogue was a delicate attempt to reconcile the past with what was unfolding before their eyes. "I can't help but wonder," her mother murmured, her tone a blend of weary sorrow and cautious optimism. "If today will finally start to mend the rift, or if it will only reopen those old, aching wounds." Cassie nodded silently, her heart heavy with uncertainty, but also buoyed by the faint glimmer of the possibility that confronting these ghosts might be the first step toward a complete healing. Conversations in small clusters began to emerge, fragments of dialogue that hinted at long-standing conflicts and tentative attempts at reconciliation. A young beta from the visiting side remarked softly, "We've carried our share of secrets and hurt, but maybe, just maybe, today is a new beginning." His words, though simple, reverberated through the group, stirring a mix of hope and skepticism. Nearby, an elder from Cassie's pack recalled with a trembling voice, "Our history is painful, but it has taught us the value of resilience. Perhaps this meeting is the moment we can truly move forward." As the discussion deepened, the lines between estrangement and kinship began to blur. The physical distance that had separated the two families for so long seemed to dissolve as they shared stories of loss and the painstaking process of survival. Every word exchanged was a tentative bridge spanning the chasm of old grudges. "It's not about forgetting," one of the elders insisted gently, "but about understanding and embracing the lessons our past has forced upon us." The sincerity in his eyes, the weight of his tone, and the soft murmur of agreement from others lent his words a quiet authority. With the border not far behind them and the meeting spot serving as a neutral ground, the atmosphere was charged with an ineffable mix of anticipation and melancholy. Cassie's heart, still echoing with the doubts and fears of earlier, now beat a measured rhythm as she took in every detail of this reunion. The air seemed to vibrate with the possibility of redemption, a chance for old, isolated wounds to finally begin their healing process under the open, honest light of day. As the gathering dispersed into small groups to share memories and tentative plans for moving forward, a collective question lingered in the air. Could today be the turning point that reshapes our history? The uncertainty was palpable, yet amid the soft murmurs and reflective pauses, there emerged a quiet, resolute hope. Every member present, whether young or old, was now a part of a slow, deliberate journey, one that promised not a sudden erasure of pain, but the gentle beginning of healing and understanding. In that charged, open space on the border, with the past and future converging in a single, poignant moment, Cassie felt the weight of her family's legacy settle around her. The reunion was not a flawless instant forgiveness. It was a step, a crucial, vulnerable step toward mending fractured hearts and rewriting a narrative that had been defined by isolation and unhealed rifts for too long. And as the early morning sun began to rise over the horizon, its golden light casting long shadows behind them, every person present silently wondered, how will this encounter alter the course of the past and the future? Family secrets and bold confrontations. The air in the meeting room grew thick as the tensions long held began to ignite. Voices that had been hushed for years now burst forth, raw, unguarded, and unapologetic. Cassie found herself in the center of it all, her heart pounding as centuries of rejections and hidden pains emerged in short, staccato bursts. "Why did you ever leave her?" demanded one of the younger pack members, his tone clipped with anger and disbelief. His eyes flashed. Every syllable was a jab at the bitter past, a past that had defined Cassie's entire existence. The question cut through the silence like a shard of ice. Cassie's stomach twisted. Her inner voice screamed, "I have lived with this every day." Yet she struggled to match the fury in his gaze. "It wasn't about forgetting," she managed, her voice tight. "It was about survival. Yours, mine, and everyone's." Her words, though short, bore the weight of years and the scars of unhealed hurt. Across the room, an elder with a voice seasoned by endless regret spoke softly. "We all carry our burdens, but some secrets have festered for too long." His words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. His eyes, clouded with old sorrow, met Cassie's. The moment passed in a flash, a silent promise that the truth, though painful, must be told. Cassie's mother, trembling slightly, added in a quiet, controlled tone, "Your father's actions, they left deep wounds. I spent years in silence, too afraid to confront what was lost." Her voice cracked on the last word, before she swallowed back the raw emotions. Her confession was brief but fierce. It resonated with every person present, a revelation that both isolated and bound the family with shared pain. A short pause followed. The tension, now tangible and volatile, pulsed in every corner of the room. Then, in the midst of the confrontation, the Alpha, Cassie's estranged father, spoke, his voice low and forced. "I made choices I can never take back," he admitted, each word punctuated by regret. He leaned forward, the harsh light catching the lines of sorrow etched on his face. "I rejected what should have been cherished. I have haunted myself with that mistake every single day." His words struck like blunt force. Cassie felt as if the room had narrowed to a single point of pain. Every word hit home, she thought. Yet, in her heart, a spark of defiance began to kindle. "And what about the cost?" she challenged, voice quivering between anger and grief. "What about the daughter I never asked for, born of that betrayal? How can you expect me to carry this burden with pride?" Her question was a lightning bolt. The room shuddered under its force. The Alpha's expression softened, but his eyes remained guarded. "I never meant for you to suffer," he murmured, nearly inaudible. His admission was like a fissure in a long-sealed dam, allowing a flood of emotion to spill over. Between heated exchanges, another voice rose, a soft, measured but firm voice from a Gamma relative. "We must unburden ourselves," the young woman urged. "Our secrets have kept us apart for too long. Today, let them be laid bare." The call for catharsis was simple, direct. Short sentences that cut through the tension like a scalpel. "We hurt, we regret. We must forgive. And if not for each other, then for ourselves." Cassie's mind swirled with fragments of her own identity. She had always felt caught between the expectations of being a warrior and the raw vulnerability of being a daughter, betrayed by fate. "Who am I if not defined by this history?" she wondered as tears threatened to spill. Yet, with every confrontation, she felt the slow, painful process of shedding old skin. "I refuse to let this past dictate who I am," she declared, voice stronger now, filled with a mixture of rage and resolute hope. "I am not just the product of rejection. I am my own person." Her words, punctuated by a moment of stunned silence, seemed to ripple through the crowd. Each family member present, young and old, appeared to draw strength from her defiant declaration. It was a brief, powerful moment of clarity, a collective understanding that the process of healing must begin with confronting the truth, no matter how painful. In the tension-filled space, the interplay of harsh words and tender apologies gradually gave way to tentative steps toward reconciliation. The Alpha's voice, once laced only with sorrow, now carried an undercurrent of remorse and a desperate plea for forgiveness. "I can't undo what's been done," he said, his tone barely above a whisper. "But I beg you, let's find a way to mend this rift. Not for me, but for the sake of our shared future." Every sentence was brisk, every pause deliberate. The room's atmosphere shifted. What was once a battleground of unresolved anger began to transform into a sanctuary for raw honesty. Soft nods, tearful glances, and even a few whispered assurances started to fill the silence. A delicate balance between confrontation and healing was being forged, one that hinted at the possibility of redemption, however uncertain. In that charged and pivotal moment, the family realized that exposing their wounds was only the first step toward finding solace. The conversation, a tapestry woven from threads of anger, regret, and fragile hope, signaled a turning point. It was a moment when bitterness clashed with the budding desire for forgiveness, when the past was no longer a silent force but a palpable presence demanding resolution. Cassie sat back and listened, each word a reminder of the deep scars that had defined their lives. And as the brief confrontation eventually ebbed into a cautious calm, she wondered, with a mix of fear and yearning, if this raw honesty could indeed be the catalyst for lasting change. Could confronting these family secrets finally set them on a path to healing? The question lingered in the charged air, a promise that the painful process had just begun, but that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward through the darkness. Trial by fire. In the early hours of the morning, before the first glimmer of daylight could claim the sky, Cassie was already deep into her rigorous training. The calloused feel of the rough concrete beneath her feet and the crisp chill of The pre-dawn air were constant reminders of the harsh path she had chosen. Every drop of sweat and every labored breath was a testament to the strength and resilience that flowed through her veins. Attributes carved out of years of inner turmoil and silent defiance. Her training ground, a secluded clearing near the outskirts of her pack's territory, was where she pushed her limits. Under the sparse glow of a single street lamp, Cassie sprinted along a rugged, winding trail. With each stride, the rhythmic pounding of her feet became a metronome, marking a heartbeat of determination. This is not just exercise, she thought. It's a battle against everything that has ever held me back. Her muscles burned with the familiar fiery sensation of exertion, yet her focus was unyielding. She moved like water, fluid, relentless, and determined to carve a path through every obstacle in front of her. After her run, she transitioned into an intense session of strength training. With a pair of heavy weights in each hand, Cassie performed countless sets of push-ups and pull-ups, each repetition echoing a defiant vow to rise above the memories that haunted her. The sweat dripped into her eyes, stinging momentarily, but she welcomed the distraction. Pain is temporary, strength is forever. Her inner monologue repeated in a steady cadence. Through every contraction of her muscles, she reclaimed a piece of herself, a warrior forged in the relentless trial by fire of her own making. Yet the physical exertion was only part of her daily rite. At night, when the rest of the pack lay silent and still, Cassie immersed herself in the underground world of illicit fights. These bouts were raw, unfiltered displays of primal combat, a stage where strength, strategy, and a warrior's spirit were put to the ultimate test. The arena was a grim, makeshift ring set in an abandoned warehouse, its dark corners and echoing walls lending an eerie reverence to the violence that unfolded within. Here, fighting was more than a sport. It was a means of confronting the brutality of the world head-on, and perhaps an effort to purge the lingering ache of rejection and loss. As the fight commenced, adrenaline surged in her veins like a wildfire. The sharp sound of the bell marked the beginning of a round, and Cassie moved with explosive precision. Her opponent, a formidable fighter known only by his moniker White Tiger, lunged forward with a ferocity that had been honed over years of underground battles. The collision of their movements was both chaotic and poetic. The air filled with the thud of fists, the hiss of redirected momentum, and the metallic tang of blood mingling with sweat. Every punch Cassie landed was a cathartic release, a vivid punctuation to her silent struggles. With each dodge and every counterattack, she reasserted her independence and her determination to rise above the labels and legacies that had once defined her. In the midst of the frenetic pace, moments of introspection found their way into her thoughts. I fight not just to win, but to prove that I am more than the scars of my past, she mused internally. The fight was rhythmic, a dance of force and finesse, where every movement was both an act of survival and a silent declaration of self-worth. Amid the chaos, a brief pause, a slight falter in her opponent's breath, was enough for Cassie to seize control and deliver the decisive blow. In that split second of triumph, the adrenaline still surged, and yet a soothing clarity began to settle over her. This was her trial by fire, a purging of old wounds, a reaffirmation that every bruise carried the promise of strength anew. When the final bell rang, and the makeshift arena erupted with a mixture of cheers and the subdued murmurs of cautious admiration, Cassie stood victorious. The physical exhilaration of combat was interwoven with a deep, unspoken satisfaction that went far beyond winning a fight. In those tense, charged moments, she had confronted not only her physical limitations, but the emotional demons that had lingered in the corners of her heart for too long. Each fight was a canvas upon which she painted resilience, endurance, and the unyielding promise to herself that she was capable of overcoming the darkness. As she wrapped her bandages around a freshly bruised hand, Cassie's mind replayed the night's events. The underground arena, with its flickering fluorescent lights and echoing roars of a fragmented audience, had become a crucible, a place where every ounce of pain was transmuted into raw power. It was a ritual that reaffirmed her place in a world that had once seemed intent on breaking her spirit. Every grimy punch, every calculated dodge, was a step towards healing, a way to silence the voices that had once told her she was unworthy of love and acceptance. In that solitary moment, amid the fading echoes of combat and the steady hum of her racing heart, Cassie resolved that every trial, every bruise, every scar would serve as a reminder of her strength. The underground fights and the grueling training routines were not merely tests of physical prowess, but essential rites of passage. They were the embodiments of her relentless spirit, a testament that even when the world tried to define her by its harshest moments, she would always emerge stronger and more determined than ever before. With the fire of combat still igniting her veins and the heavy, lingering pulse of introspection in her mind, Cassie stepped out into the cool night. The city lights beckoned. In the distance, a promise of both challenge and change. Every step forward was a defiant declaration. She was a warrior, shaped by the flames of her own trials. A warrior prepared to face whatever lay ahead, be it the roar of battle or the gentle murmur of hope. Unwritten histories and the bond that endures. In the hushed corridors of memory, where the echoes of a long-forgotten past still linger, Cassie finds herself retracing the steps of a history that shaped her very existence. Her parents' story is one written in the quiet agony of forced decisions, a forced mating that, rather than uniting two hearts in love, set in motion a chain of rejection and regret that reverberated through generations. It is a legacy that Cassie carries in every breath, a weight that anchors her destiny to both sorrow and the faint hope of renewal. Her mother, a woman of quiet resilience, was once forced into a union not of her choosing. In a time when power dictated passion, her love was coerced, a bitter merger arranged by circumstances beyond her control. The union, meant to bind families and secure alliances, instead left emotional scars that never fully healed. After that fateful encounter, the Alpha, her destined mate, swiftly rejected the very person he was supposed to cherish, leaving her mother to face the world alone with a shattered heart and the heavy burden of an unwanted pregnancy. Cassie recalls those whispered tales of betrayal and heartache that wove through her childhood. The rejection was not just a moment in time. It was a phenomenon that defined her mother's life thereafter. In each retelling, the tone was the same, an undercurrent of sorrow mixed with the fierce determination to survive and rebuild. That painful decision by her father left a void, a scar that manifested itself not only in the fractured relationships, but also in the strength of Cassie's own character. Every moment of pain carries its own lesson. She silently reflects, understanding that while the past inflicted deep wounds, it also forged a resilience that allowed her to rise as the pack's most formidable warrior. The consequences of that rejection were as far-reaching as they were intricate. In the aftermath, the family was fragmented, divided by secrets and unsaid words. There were days when the silence in their home was so profound that it seemed as if each room held its own sorrow, a palpable reminder of what was lost. Her mother's struggle to reconcile her forced fate with the love she yearned to have is something Cassie understood all too well. It was a narrative that explained the quiet determination behind her mother's eyes and the subtle defiance that she so carefully nurtured within herself. Yet, as the layers of time peeled back, a curious detail emerged that hinted at the possibility of reconciliation, a chance to rewrite the narrative of rejection. Rumors, whispered in hushed tones among the elders of the pack, suggested that the rejection might have been tainted by a small technical detail, an overlooked error in the ancient rites that bound the families together. This minor discrepancy, buried in the formalities of old laws and traditions, might offer a sliver of opportunity to reconsider the past. Could it be that fate itself allows for a second chance? Cassie pondered, her mind drawn to the possibility that even the most Ingrained wrongs might be righted, however, imperfectly. The idea, though tentative and wrapped in mystery, stirred something within her, a blend of cautious hope and burning curiosity. Her parents' forced union, with its harsh imposition and subsequent rejection, had long been considered immutable history. Yet if this subtle technicality could indeed offer a route to reconciliation, it might provide the redemption needed to heal the wounds of years long endured. It was as if the cosmos had left behind a small, enigmatic clue, a key hidden within, the very fabric of tradition that might unlock the door to forgiveness. Cassie's introspection deepened as she considered how these events had forged her identity. Her mother's quiet strength and her father's relentless regret were not merely relics of a painful past. They were the building blocks of her own resilience. Each step she took on the training ground, every drop of sweat shed during arduous routines, was imbued with the legacy of that turbulent history. In every unyielding punch and determined sprint, she carried the echoes of her mother's unspoken suffering and the burden of her father's remorse, a burden that had, in a twisted way, granted her an unbreakable spirit. As she reflected on these intertwined destinies, Cassie couldn't help but wonder how the opportunity for reconciliation might alter everything. Could the acknowledgement of a minor error in an ancient rite not only heal decades of familial strife, but also redefine our future? The thought was as tantalizing as it was frightening. It promised a path where the chains of the past could gradually loosen, where the bitter taste of rejection might finally be replaced by the sweetness of understanding and, perhaps, forgiveness. In Sound, this quiet, reflective space, Cassie felt the dual nature of her heritage, a past marred by forced choices and deep hurts, and a future that might yet be brightened by the small promise of a second chance. The unwritten histories of her family were intricate, a tapestry woven with threads of sorrow, strength, and the slow, determined quest for redemption. Each revelation, each whispered secret, had ultimately led her to this moment, where the possibility of mending what had been broken shimmered like a fragile light in the darkness. And so, with her heart both heavy and hopeful, Cassie resolved to explore this new possibility. Though the past could not be changed, the chance to re-examine it, to unlock the potential for long overdue forgiveness, offered a compelling promise. The journey ahead was uncertain, cloaked in the mist of old wounds and fresh revelations. But it was a journey she was now ready to embrace. A journey that would demand courage, compassion, and an unyielding determination to build a future unmarred by the mistakes of the past. A vision from Luna. That night, as the weight of the day settled into a quiet fatigue, Cassie surrendered to sleep with a gentle, almost reluctant release. In the stillness of her room, dreams began to weave a tapestry of light and wonder, a tapestry that soon drew her into a realm where time and sorrow seemed to dissolve into nothingness. In her dream, the boundaries between reality and reverie blurred. Cassie found herself standing alone on a soft, dewy meadow under a vast, star-studded sky. The cool night air caressed her skin, each breath a whisper of destiny. In the midst of the endless expanse, a radiant glow emerged on the horizon, a shimmering presence that defied the darkness around her. As the glow grew brighter, it coalesced into the ethereal figure of Luna, the revered moon goddess. Her form was graceful and luminous, draped in flowing silvery robes that seemed to be spun from the very light of the moon itself. Cassie. Luna's voice resonated across the meadow, a sound both gentle and commanding, as if it were the murmur of the wind through ancient trees. You have walked a path burdened by sorrow and scars, but within you burns a light that can heal, transform, and redefine destiny. Every word was imbued with a celestial warmth that slowly melted the icy layers of Cassie's doubts. The dream felt vivid yet surreal, as if the goddess's very presence was a balm for the aching fissures of a long-forgotten past. Cassie's heart pounded in quiet awe as she stepped forward. "Why have you come to me?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of reverence and anticipation. The answer came not in words, but in the rhythmic pulse of the moonlit air, as Luna's eyes shone with an ancient wisdom. "I come bearing a vision, a prophecy of new beginnings, and the chance to reconcile what has been broken," Luna intoned, her voice echoing softly like distant chimes. "Look to the skies, and ask yourself, what if the ties that have bound your family for so long could be mended by confronting the truth of the past?" The meadow around them shimmered with an almost palpable energy, every blade of grass and every rustle of the wind infused with the promise of transformation. As Cassie listened, her thoughts swirled with a flood of questions. Can this mysterious vision really alter the destiny set by old wounds? Is there a pathway toward redemption hidden within the forgotten echoes of our history? The questions were soft but insistent, echoing in the silent expanse of her dreaming mind. Luna extended her luminous hand, and with a gesture that felt both tender and resolute, she revealed a scene, a family reunion under the pale glow of the moon, a gathering that held both pain and the hope of renewal. "In that moment, you must be brave," Luna murmured. "For the future is written in the stars, yet also in the choices you make when confronted with the darkness of the past. Will you choose to embrace your heritage with all its scars and secrets? Or will you allow bitterness to keep you bound to old regrets?" As the vision unfolded before her, Cassie saw her family gathered, faces filled with both longing and sorrow, hands that reached out in silent apology, eyes that glimmered with the tentative promise of forgiveness. The scene was both heart-wrenching and profoundly beautiful, a reminder that even within the deepest fractures, there lies the potential for healing. The dream's imagery wove past and future into a single moving tableau, each figure a testament to their shared history, each moment a fragile promise that could be mended with understanding and time. "Your journey does not end with pain," Luna continued, her voice gently permeating every corner of the field. "I ask you, Cassie, what will you do when your past calls to you with its bittersweet memories? Will you stand and face those hidden wounds, or will you let them dictate the path you walk? The decision lies within you alone." Luna's words, though enigmatic, carried a quiet conviction. It was as if the moon goddess was offering not only guidance but also a spark, an invitation to reclaim the power that had been subdued by sorrow and neglect for far too long. As the celestial vision began to fade, the soft glow of the meadow slowly dimmed, leaving Cassie with a lingering sense of both clarity and mystery. The echo of Luna's final whisper drifted around her. "Remember, the bond you share with your family is strong. Redemption is not a path without obstacles, but it is one paved with choices that honor both pain and love. Trust in the light within you and let it guide you forward." When Cassie awoke, the early morning light filtered through her window with a gentle persistence. The vivid images of the dream clung to her mind like dewdrops on a spider's web, fragile, yet glistening with promise. Her heart felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had been lifted just enough to allow a spark of hope to shine through. The prophecy from Luna remained etched in her soul, a quiet challenge that asked her to question not only her past, but the future that lay before her. In that moment of wakefulness, Cassie understood that the vision was more than a mere dream. It was a turning point, a call to gather the shattered pieces of her history and transform them into a mosaic of strength and forgiveness. The moon goddess had given her a clear, if mysterious, message. The time to reconcile was near, and within that reconciliation lay the possibility of healing old wounds and forging a new destiny. And so, with the gentle light of dawn as her guide, Cassie resolved to carry the vision with her, a guiding beacon as she prepared to face what the day and her destiny would bring. Choosing to embrace destiny, the morning after the celestial vision dawned with a quiet intensity. Cassie felt the persistent echoes of Luna's words reverberating through her heart as she prepared for the day ahead. in the softness of early light. The delicate mists that clung to the horizon seemed to mirror the uncertainty and the weight of long-hidden regrets that she carried within. Every breath she took was a subtle reminder of the dream that had stirred her spirit, setting her on a path toward confronting the painful legacy of rejection that had haunted her family for so long. Inside the modest study of her estranged father, the formidable alpha whose very presence had once epitomized a breach of trust, Cassie found him waiting, his posture weary, yet imbued with a stubborn resolve. The room was bathed in gentle sunlight, its calm atmosphere offering a fragile stage for a conversation that had been years in the making. They had come together not merely by fate, but by the conscious decision to face the ghosts of their past. The air was thick with the unspoken weight of everything that had been left unsaid. Her father's voice broke the silence, subdued and reflective. "Cassie," he began, each syllable measured as though he were treading over broken glass. "I have carried this burden for far too long. My choices, my rejection, they have cast a long shadow over us, over you, over your mother, and over what we once hoped our family would be." His eyes, deep with regret, met hers, and for a moment, the pain of the past flickered like an open wound in the soft morning light. Cassie's heart pounded as she slowly absorbed his admission. In her mind, a myriad of thoughts swirled: anger, sorrow, and the quiet possibility of healing, all collided in a tumultuous storm. It's been years since I felt the chill of that rejection. Every day since has been marked by its lasting sting. Can we ever lay that to rest? She questioned silently, her inner turmoil echoing in the stillness of the room. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Cassie spoke softly. "I have lived in the shadow of that decision for as long as I can remember. It has shaped who I am, both my strength and my scars. I cannot pretend that I haven't felt the pain of being born into a legacy of bitter choices. But perhaps in this moment, we have a chance to choose a different path, a chance to redefine our future." Her father's face, hardened by years of regret, softened as he listened to her words. "I never intended to cause you pain, Cassie. My actions were born out of my own fear and weakness. I rejected what should have been the cornerstone of our family. Every day I have wished for a chance, any chance, to mend that error." His voice, now low and tinged with sincere vulnerability, filled the room like a gentle confession. "But I know that apologies alone cannot heal these wounds. It is our decisions now that will shape everything to come." In that moment of shared vulnerability, the past and present coalesced into a fragile, luminous possibility. Cassie's inner voice, once turbulent with resentment, began to settle. Maybe this is the beginning of something new, a chance to finally break free from the chains of old regrets and build a future together. Her eyes glistened, not merely with tears of sorrow, but with the spark of tentative hope. Silence stretched between them, a delicate pause filled with the weight of every unspoken word. Finally, her father continued, his tone steadier. "I have learned, painfully, that some choices mark you forever. But today, I ask you to consider that we might be able to change, not erase the past, but forge a new path that honors it without being defined by it. Will you allow us the chance to try, Cassie? Can we, together, embrace destiny and work towards healing the rifts that have long divided us?" Cassie felt her heart swell at the sincere plea in his voice. It was a critical moment, a crossroads between the unyielding grip of resentment and the hopeful promise of reconciliation. "I want to believe that we can," she replied softly, her words steady and clear. "But it will take more than just words. It will take a willingness to confront every hidden pain, every memory of rejection, and to slowly transform those scars into something that no longer holds us captive." Her father nodded, accepting her words as both an acknowledgement of the past and a quiet commitment to the future. "Then let us start by taking that first step," he said, voice resolute yet gentle. "Let us face our painful memories together and choose to move forward, not as separate souls haunted by past mistakes, but as a family united by the desire to heal." The room seemed to breathe a collective sigh, a momentary lapse in the storm of their emotions where hope quietly rivaled the shadows. The delicate balance of their dialogue, filled with painful admissions and tentative promises, underscored the monumental decision before them. This was not merely a conversation, it was a reckoning with history, a choice that would ripple out, influencing the very future of their family. Cassie sat back, her thoughts a gentle murmur against the quiet backdrop of the room. Every word exchanged now was a building block for a future they desperately needed, a future where the bitter legacy of rejection could be transformed into a tapestry of resilience and acceptance. "The past will always be part of us," she reflected, "but it does not have to define us." The critical choice laid before them was both an invitation and a challenge, to finally accept the inevitability of pain and turn it into a source of strength. In that serene, reflective space, father and daughter stood at the threshold of a new beginning. The internal turmoil that had long clouded their relationship began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile resolve, one that promised to guide them through the lingering echoes of rejection toward a future replete with possibility. With every word spoken, every tear shared, the path forward, though steeped in memory and sorrow, shone faintly with the light of redemption and the promise of healing, paths to forgiveness and new beginnings. In the quiet aftermath of the intense personal confrontations and heartfelt admissions, a tentative plan began to form, a plan designed to slowly mend the fractures that had divided this family for so many years. The conversation between Cassie and her estranged father had opened the door to reconciliation, but the journey was far from complete. Now, the next step was to set the stage for a follow-up meeting, one where Cassie's family and her father could come together in a more structured setting to tackle the most deeply hidden wounds. That morning, as the first light of dawn brought a fragile calm, Cassie's mother gathered with a few key family members. Huddled in the living room, papers and schedules spread across a polished table, they carefully discussed how to approach the upcoming meeting. The room was filled with a cautious optimism, a sense of guarded hope tempered by the awareness that old wounds could easily be reopened if not handled with care. "We need a space where we can speak freely but with respect," her mother said softly, tracing a finger along the calendar. Her voice was measured, each word weighed with the gravity of the past and the promise of tomorrow. "This follow-up meeting isn't just another conversation. It's our opportunity to outline our grievances, to express our sincere apologies, and to, hopefully, begin stitching together the broken threads of our family bond." The quiet determination in her tone gave each person present a small measure of courage. Across the table, an elder from Cassie's pack added his perspective. "We've all suffered in silence for too long. Every word we choose from now on must be deliberate. We must ask ourselves, will these steps mend old wounds?" His question, simple yet profound, hung in the air like a challenge. It was a reminder that reconciliation was not guaranteed and that the process required both bravery and careful deliberation. Cassie listened as the plans took shape. The decision was made. The follow-up meeting would be held in a neutral space, a comfortable private conference room at a local community center, chosen for its warm lighting and inviting atmosphere. The setting was intended to ease the tension, to foster an environment where emotions could be shared openly, yet without the overwhelming pressure of history in every corner. The details were meticulously coordinated. The meeting time was set in the late afternoon, a quiet period that allowed everyone to arrive calmly and not feel rushed by the early morning's chaos. Her father, too, had agreed to participate in these subsequent talks, signaling his willingness to not only answer difficult questions, but to listen. A mediator from within the pack, a trusted, wise individual known for bridging gaps between conflicting voices, was to be present. This mediator would help ensure that every sentiment expressed was heard without judgment, and that both sides had an equal opportunity to share their stories, their regrets, and importantly, their hopes. As Cassie stepped back from the planning table, her mind churned with both the burden of past rejections and the glimmer of possibility suggested by these new arrangements. In her internal monologue, she pondered, will these steps finally mend the old wounds? Can carefully chosen words, sincere apologies, and a willingness to face our shared history truly pave the way for healing? The uncertainty was palpable. Each question a reminder that reconciliation was a process, one that might not yield immediate comfort, but held the promise of something better. Her thoughts drifted to the delicate balance that the meeting must maintain. It was not just about airing grievances or dredging up painful memories. It was about acknowledging those hurts, understanding their origins, and, most importantly, finding a path forward. Every decision made now would echo into the future, influencing how each family member would carry these scars, and possibly how they would transform them into badges of survival and strength. In that moment of reflection, Cassie recalled a quiet phrase from one of her pack elders. Our past is the soil from which our future grows. We may not be able to erase the hard ground of rejection, but we can cultivate it with compassion and care. The simple wisdom resonated with her, infusing her with both a sense of duty and a cautious optimism. If the meeting could serve as a catalyst, even the smallest seed of forgiveness might blossom into a future where the family could finally stand united. As the planning meeting drew to a close, soft murmurs of agreement and a shared commitment to truth filled the room. Her mother looked each person in the eyes and said, "Let our words be measured, our voices compassionate, and our hopes as strong as the very bonds that tie us together." Her plea was both an invitation and a challenge, a call to face the inevitable discomfort with a determination to heal rather than to hurt. Cassie felt that the painstaking plans for the follow-up meeting were more than just logistical details. They were the first careful steps toward rewriting a painful history. The atmosphere was electric with potential. Each detailed plan, each carefully scheduled moment, was a testament to the desire for change. As she stepped outside into the bright, promising light of late morning, she carried within her the echo of every measured word spoken in that room. The road ahead was uncertain, and the wounds were far from healed, but for the first time in many long years, there existed a path forward, a path that, if traveled with honesty and compassion, might just lead to forgiveness and new beginnings. And so, with the plans for reconciliation firmly in place, the family prepared to take that daring next step, one that would, in time, determine whether the old wounds could finally be healed and whether the painful legacy of rejection might give way to the promise of unity. Every heartbeat, every shared silence, whispered the same question in the language of hope. Will these steps mend the old wounds, or will the ghosts of the past find a way to haunt us still? The future, though uncertain, beckoned with the promise of possibility. Between whispers and promises, late that evening, when the world outside had settled into a quiet lull and the weight of the day's confrontations seemed to soften into a gentle hum, Cassie found herself embraced by an atmosphere of tender intimacy. It was in these hushed moments that the raw edges of pain began to blur, making space for healing and the promise of new beginnings. In a quiet corner of the family home, away from the formalities of the reunion meetings and guarded reconciliations, she met her mate in a setting that felt both secret and sacred. They sat together in the dim glow of a small lamp placed near a window, where the soft shadows danced gently on their faces. Cassie's mate, with eyes that held both warmth and resolute compassion, reached out and took her hand in his. "Cassie," he murmured, his voice low and comforting. "I know How heavy your heart has been. Let me help carry some of that load." His words were spoken slowly, each syllable laden with both empathy and the deep-seated promise of unwavering support. In that quiet moment, their world reduced to shared whispers and the silent language of touch, Cassie felt a stirring within her, a gentle awakening of hope, where there had long been only the shadow of rejection. "I have always felt as if I was caught between two worlds," she confided softly, her voice trembling as it wove through the stillness. "I am the daughter of a forsaken past, yet with you, I feel the possibility of a future filled with tenderness and trust." Her honest admission, though laced with vulnerability, resonated between them like a whispered promise. Her mate leaned closer, his eyes searching hers as though he sought to map the intricate paths of her heart. "Our bond is something sacred," he replied. "It isn't defined by the scars of the past, but by the strength we find in each other. Every whispered secret and every gentle touch, these are the promises we make to rise above what has been." The simplicity and clarity of his words enveloped her, offering assurance while inviting a silent, unspoken dialogue of mutual understanding. Elsewhere in the home, in small, private alcoves away from the formal public spaces of the reunion, family members engaged in their own soft reconciliations. Cassie's mother, once a figure of stoic sorrow, was seen in a quiet moment with a wise elder, their conversation punctuated by soft smiles and warm nods. "I never thought I'd see the day when forgiveness would be spoken as tenderly as these words," her mother whispered, her tone gentle yet determined. "Today, our hearts have the strength to mend, even if slowly." The elder's eyes crinkled with a mix of relief and pride as he replied, "Each healing moment, no matter how small, is a step towards a brighter future." In another quiet corner, a younger cousin approached Cassie with a tentative smile. "I know it's not easy," she said in a hushed tone. "Opening up about the pain of the past can be frightening. But here, in these moments, I feel that maybe the truth can set us free." The sincerity in her voice was a comforting reminder that even those still young in the ways of the world understood the delicate balance between pain and reconciliation. Back in the intimate gathering with her mate, the conversation flowed like a gentle melody. They discussed dreams and hopes in a series of soft exchanges, each sentence a delicate thread weaving together their shared future. "I have always imagined a day when our love would not be hidden," Cassie said, her eyes reflecting both vulnerability and determination. "A day when we can share our truth, however quietly, with those who hold our hearts dear." Her mate nodded, his own voice a tender whisper. "Our love is not for the world to judge, but for us to cherish. Every secret, every vulnerable confession, strengthens the bond that carries us forward." As the night deepened, their dialogue turned to the idea of renewed vows, a subtle reimagining of promises made in the midst of previous turmoil. They spoke of wanting to honor not only their personal journey, but also the resilience of the family that had long struggled under the weight of past transgressions. "Let's promise," he said quietly, "to always speak our truth, even in whispers, so that our love remains unshadowed by secrets or old sorrows." Cassie smiled softly, her heart lightened by the gravity of his words. "I promise," she replied. "I promise that we will create our own language of love, one that heals rather than hides, one that nurtures every tender part of who we are." In the quiet intimacy of that space, their voices softened into a gentle refrain that seemed to echo the old, familiar promises of the pack. Promises that, despite decades of pain and isolation, were still capable of being renewed. The vulnerability in their conversation invited curiosity. How could such intimate, heartfelt moments transform a legacy marred by rejection? The questions hung in the air like delicate dewdrops on a spider's web, fragile yet profoundly significant. Every whispered word was a silent vow that their love, however discreetly nurtured, held the power to redefine the shadows of their past. They knew that their path was not free from obstacles, that the journey toward complete reconciliation would be long and fraught with moments of doubt. Yet, in that hidden space between the day's hard realities and the promise of a new future, they found solace. Their intimate confessions served as small, powerful steps toward creating a space where forgiveness could bloom. Quietly, tenderly, and ultimately, courageously. As the night wore on, the soft glow of streetlights outside merged with the internal warmth of their resolve. Together, they had forged a quiet sanctuary where every tender moment, every shared vulnerability, was a beacon of hope amid a world that had too often seemed cold and indifferent. And in that sanctuary, between whispers and promises, Cassie and her mate began to build a future that honored both the wounds of the past and the promise of a brighter, more open tomorrow. Rituals of Love, the Alpha and Mate Ceremonies. Under a canopy of softly glowing twilight, the anticipation for the ceremonial unions thickened the air with an almost sacred energy. The private Alpha-Mate ceremonies, long whispered about in hushed tones and passed down through generations, were now unfolding in a space imbued with both solemn reverence and quiet hope. This was the moment when past sorrows would be acknowledged, and new beginnings would be sown. First for Cassie's parents, and later for Cassie herself. The setting was modest yet touched by the magic of tradition. A circle of old trees, their branches gently swaying in the cool evening breeze, formed a natural cathedral around a simple stone platform. Lanterns, casting a soft, flickering glow, hung from the sturdy boughs, and a carpet of wildflowers lay scattered across the ground. Each element of the scene whispered promises of healing and renewal. At the heart of the ceremony for her parents, the atmosphere was thick with memories, the pain of forced unions, the bitter taste of rejection, and the long-held hope for forgiveness. Family members gathered quietly, each face reflecting a tapestry of emotions. The soft murmur of spoken prayers blended with the rustle of leaves, creating a rhythmic cadence that resonated deep within every soul present. As the ceremony commenced, her father, the once estranged Alpha, stepped forward with a solemn expression that bore the weight of regret and a fervent desire for redemption. His voice, when he began, carried the gravity of a man who had made unalterable mistakes. I stand before you, not as a perfect man, but as one who has known the sting of regret. My heart is heavy with the decisions of the past. Today I ask for the strength to accept the consequences of my actions and for the courage to forge a new path, a path defined not by rejection, but by love. Each word was measured, soft, yet imbued with an unmistakable intensity that softened the hard edges of old resentment. Beside him, Cassie's mother, her resolve tempered by years of silent suffering, approached, her eyes glistening with both sorrow and hope. "We have been bound by choices that tore us apart," she said in a trembling yet clear voice. "But tonight, we embrace the ritual that offers us a second chance. Our love, even scarred by the past, remains the light that guides our future, the Mai." Sacred rituals unfolded with precise grace. A ceremonial knife, passed down through the ages, was held aloft as an elder intoned an ancient incantation. With deliberate care, a small cut was made on each of their hands, a symbolic act signifying that, though they bore wounds from the past, they would share these marks as a reminder of their intertwined fates. As the fresh blood mingled on their skin, it formed a vivid, unbroken circle, a potent symbol of unity, sacrifice, and the promise of everlasting love. In this circle, we find our beginning and our eternal bond. An elder intoned, his voice resonating with the tradition of countless forebears. "May this wound remind us that all pain carries the seed of strength and that every scar is a testament to our survival." The words, simple yet evocative, rippled through the assembly, stirring a deep, collective yearning for redemption. Following the blood ritual, their exchange of vows marked the emotional crescendo of the ceremony. With steady voices, Cassie's parents pledged their commitment in clear, heartfelt language that evoked both the gravity of their shared past and the promise of a mending future. "I promise," her father began, his words soft yet resolute, "to honor you with the love I failed to give before, to protect you with all the strength I have, and to walk every step of this new journey by your side." His words, spoken slowly with deliberation, echoed in the quiet night, their sincerity tangible to all who listened. Her mother continued, her voice a delicate blend of regret and hope. "I promise to accept the shared scars of our past, to forgive the wounds that have long divided us, and to build a future where our love is the guiding light." With each vow, the ceremonial space seemed to vibrate with a raw, potent energy, a living testimony to the transformative power of forgiveness and unity. Later that evening, the private alpha mate ceremony that would eventually be reserved for Cassie awaited its own unfolding. The scene was set in a similarly enchanted clearing, where the soft cadence of nature and the whisper of age-old traditions prepared the ground for her union. There, amidst gentle laughter and tender glances from those gathered, the stage was laid for a moment that promised to be equally profound and healing. Every word, every symbolic act, from the exchange of heirloom tokens to the gentle confirming kiss that sealed their vow, was a step towards transforming an inherited legacy of rejection into a narrative of redemption and love. The ceremonies, both past and forthcoming, were not grand pageantries meant for public spectacle, but intimate rites of passage. They were the quiet moments where hearts spoke the unspoken, where old wounds were recognized, yet not dwelled upon, and where the promise of love was reaffirmed with a purity that transcended time and misfortune. As the lanterns flickered and the soft night air carried the echoes of sacred vows, each participant felt the profound weight of these rituals, an acknowledgement that their past, with all its scars, had prepared them for this, the quiet promise of new beginnings. In that moment, the ceremonies became more than rituals. They were a declaration that love, true, enduring, and at times painful, could transform even the most fractured of legacies into a beacon of hope. And as the night deepened, every whispered promise and every gently spoken vow wove together a tapestry of healing, unity, and the enduring bond of love. Coming together, the promise of tomorrow. As the sun began to set on that transformative day, the mood of the family gathering shifted into one of genuine joy and quiet celebration. The long journey toward reconciliation had culminated not in thunderous applause, but in warm embraces, soft laughter, and a serene acceptance that radiated from every corner of the room. Family members, old and young, those who had borne silent grudges, and those who had whispered hopes of healing, gathered together in a harmonious blend of tradition and newfound unity. In a spacious hall adorned with gentle, twinkling lights, and an array of comforting decorations that spoke of home and heritage, Cassie's family celebrated the start of a new chapter. There was a delicate beauty in the way old wounds were acknowledged openly. Each story of rejection and loss was met not with recrimination, but with empathetic nods, as if each tear shed in the past was now a stepping stone toward growth. The atmosphere was charged with a mutual understanding, a collective promise that while the scars of history were still visible, they would no longer define the future. Cassie moved among relatives with a heart brimming with cautious optimism. The air was filled with a blend of tender greetings and joyous laughter as unspoken apologies were transformed into warm smiles and supportive pats on the back. Every conversation hinted at how much had changed. The estranged alpha and his once wounded mate now exchanged gentle words with a deep sense of shared responsibility, and even the younger members, whose once shaken voices carried the weight of inherited sorrow, now spoke freely about dreams for tomorrow. In quiet corners of the celebration, hushed dialogues echoed the transformative conversations of the day before. Her mother, now more at peace, recounted soft, reflective memories of how the family had once been divided by old rejections, and how the willingness to confront those painful moments had built the foundation for a healing future. "Every wound has its story," she whispered to a close relative. "And today, we honor that story by choosing forgiveness." Her words, delivered with deep sincerity, resonated like a gentle promise that the pain of the past was finally giving way to hope. The celebration was punctuated by symbolic gestures of renewal. A beautifully decorated tree stood at the center of the gathering area, a living, breathing emblem of their shared future. Its branches, adorned with handwritten notes of forgiveness and dreams for what was to come, swayed gently in the evening breeze. Each note was a silent vow to build something better from the remnants of the past, a reminder that every shattered moment could be reassembled into a mosaic of resilience. Music, soft and uplifting, played in the background. It was a tune that was both modern and timeless, mixing the cadence of old folk melodies with contemporary harmonies, a perfect metaphor for the family's journey. As the notes drifted through the air, couples danced in gentle circles and families embraced, their interactions laced with warmth and a sense of wonder at the prospect of moving forward together. Cassie observed all these moments with a profound sense of gratitude. She recalled the struggle of living with the legacy of a forsaken past, of feeling the constant sting of rejection that once defined her every step. Now, as she saw her family, united in healing, a lightness filled her spirit, a quiet, enduring certainty that they were all capable of change, of forgiveness, and of new beginnings. Today, she thought, we come together not to forget our history, but to honor it by building a future that is filled with understanding, compassion, and lasting love. The reunion was not without its reflective pauses, moments when the memories of old pain mingled with the beauty of the present. Yet, even in those pauses, there was an unmistakable promise. A promise that the past, with all its bitterness and scars, was but a prelude to a future that held infinite possibilities. The transformation in the room was palpable, like a soft glow rising from beneath layers of darkness. It was a celebration of resilience, a confirmation that every hardship had prepared them for this moment of healing and unity. As the festivities continued into the gentle embrace of the night, the final words of the evening set a tone of anticipation for what was yet to come. With a collective breath, the family looked forward to the new chapters that lay ahead, a future where old wounds might slowly fade into memories, and where every challenge would be met with the strength of togetherness. In that serene, uplifting moment, one question resonated softly in every heart. Will the promise of tomorrow, built on the foundation of our shared past, unlock the lasting peace and unity we so desperately seek?